Okay, we're ready. Call the meeting to order, City of University Heights, Iowa City Council meeting. Today's Tuesday, December 11th, 2018. Thank everyone for coming tonight. The council is present and Dottie Maher is available on the phone. Thank you for calling in, Dottie. And first order of business is approval of minutes, November 12th. Are there any additions or corrections to the November 12th minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. Public input. I see there's some people here that probably want to speak. Come up to the microphone and state your name and address, and if you live in University Heights or not, and speak to the council. Anyone like to? Oh, Art?
Yeah, happy to.
As a former council member, you know how to do this.
Hi, everybody. I'm Arthur Nowak. I live at 1 University Way, Unit 115. My third move in University Heights over the last 46 years. And I'm happy to come before you with a concern that I have and a frustration that I have lived with and exhibited with over the last probably 30 years. I don't think there's anybody in University Heights that jogs as much as I do along Melrose, Sunset, Benton, and other streets here in University Heights. Having said that, I probably have been fingered, yelled at, told to go to hell more than anybody else also by...
I know about that, Art.
Okay. By bicyclists, scooters, riders, skateboard riders, and such. And it's got increasingly worse over the last 10 years since we had the good fortune to put in a 8-foot trail. It seemed that back when we didn't have that trail, people used the bike lanes where they should be using the bike lanes. And now they have a nice 8-foot wide trail, so they use that. So anyway, having expressed my frustration to my dear wife, she said, I can't do anything about it. You got to go to the city council. So with all due respect, Captain Peterson, I sent you an email that you never responded to, which I was disappointed in. But the University Heights City Council person who's responsible for this activity did, and I appreciate that, Nick. Thank you very much. So what I basically said is, who has the right of way in University Heights? Who owns that trail? Where should the bicyclists be? Where should I be? Should I have to run and walk in fear every time I'm out there? Isn't there some rules that should be followed? And if there are, why aren't we following those rules? And take some of these people and take them aside and either educate them or fine them. So Nick agreed that he had had some similar experiences and said this would probably be a good problem to bring before the city council. So that's why I'm here tonight. In preparation for this, I did go on the internet and did discover that there's a considerable amount of information with regard to rules of the road for bicyclists on roads, on streets, on trails, on and on. Interestingly, Cedar Rapids, the city of Cedar Rapids, has a very nice document on the internet. Ames, our sister city, I guess we could call them our sister city, also has a very nice document. So the documents are out there, and I think it's something that we, the city council, and the residents of University Heights should look into and decide what we need to do and how we can best do it. My daughter was here from Seattle this past weekend. Seattle has a very strict rules and regulations, and police are handing out tickets all the time to people who violate the rules. They, as you probably realize, bicyclists have the opportunity to use the roads just like cars do, but they also have the responsibility to follow the rules and stop at intersections, stop at lights, look both ways before they cross the intersections. And my concern is at driveway exits, and having lived at Birkdale Court before we moved over here, the exit out of Birkdale is a dangerous one, and I don't know how many times somebody either hit me or I almost hit them. And so far, I think we've been very fortunate that we have not had a major incident of somebody getting hit. Came awful close a number of times. So I have the documents that I pulled off the internet this afternoon. There are all kinds of organizations also that are into this, and they're all written out. Iowa has a number of different documents. The Iowa DOT has wonderful documents, and most of them are educational programs. And my daughter said to me, Dad, all they have to put up is one of those signs there and blinking. Iowa University Heights has rules of the road for bicyclists. Please follow them, or else you may be fined. So anyway, not to take any more of your valuable time because you've got other things, I just ask for your understanding of this problem, and hopefully we can create some rules of the road for University Heights and then somehow administer them so that the bicyclists can be safe and we, the pedestrians, joggers, runners, can also be safe. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming. If you'd like to pass what you brought out, did you bring?
I didn't bring samples for anybody.
Okay.
I brought it for you, Nick,
I appreciate
because
that.
I figure you'll be running this.
Yeah, we also have it on the agenda for later tonight to
And-
discuss this issue.
Can you stay a little bit? I mean, I have several things
Sure.
that need to be discussed, but I'll move it up.
It'll be fun to hear what you talk about.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Like old times, right, Art?
Yeah, right. Old time.
Thank you, Art. Would anyone else like to speak? Oh, Mike, Ritchie.
Evening. Mike Ritchie, 20 Olive Court. And my main questions are going to be addressed to Josiah and stuff, and it might be answered when he gives his report. But my concern is the upgrades at Olive Court, for 2019 on the roads and stuff. And what is the present width of the sidewalk, and what the proposed width will be, the street, how much further it will be widened? Will it be, will they have to take so much of our front yards to do this? Will there be a temporary construction easement to do this? Is there going to be a permanent right-of-way acquisition? And then what is the timeline? I just looked at the agenda briefly and stuff today and saw this stuff, and I did talk to John Langland from 16 Olive Court, and because of the football parking issues and stuff, where, like in my case, my people, I sent a letter out in January, they have to reply to hold the spot by the 1st of May, but if there's not going to be access to these front yards over on Olive Court, we're going to have to, somewhat address this issue. And I know that weather comes into play because we've been dealing with it in Tiffin on Roberts Ferry Road. They never did get that thing done. But, just some kind of a general information off this thing would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Would anyone else like to speak?
Hello, everyone. I am Maureen Baron, and I have purchased the commercial suite down on the very end. I am opening a Bar 3 fitness studio. And prior to opening, I've been hosting lots of different classes around the community, and my construction has been delayed a little bit, and so I am looking for additional spaces in order to host.
Can you get closer to the microphone,
Sure.
please?
I'm looking for additional spaces in order to host classes in the area. And while walking around one day with a contractor, I saw this space and wondered if I'd be able to utilize it. So I reached out to Virginia to see more about it, and she suggested that I come here to talk to all of you. So I am asking to utilize this space to teach some Bar 3 classes. Each class is 60 minutes long. It focuses on strength conditioning, cardio, and mindfulness. I come with everything that I need, with a speaker and a headset, all of the music that I need, and we make very little mess. I grew up in the Girl Scouts, and we always leave greater than the way that we found it. So that's something that I believe in. So I'm curious
Well,
to see if I
you're
could use it.
having classes for free,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and why do you do this before it opens?
Yeah, so it
More
creates a community where people get to learn more about Bar 3, what we're all about, our values, try it out, and ideally learn to love it so that then when we actually do open, they look to more options when we're open.
So Maureen, what you're doing is looking for space to do some free classes?
Yes.
To kind of promote your business
Yes. Mm-hmm.
before it opens? So how many classes are you thinking?
Well, I'll take as many as I can get. Ideally, right now, I teach 4 classes per week at different areas in the community, and then I pop up into different spaces. One example, on Saturday, I was at Midwest One Bank downtown, and Sylvia had the pleasure of joining me. So really, if I could have the space 1 or 2 times a week, it would really help to be able to defray some of the costs that I have of renting spaces. I'm also training several instructors, and so I'm looking to find some additional spaces that they would be able to teach in.
So you don't want to pay for the space?
Ideally, I would be able to utilize the space for free.
Have you checked with the developers of OUP, Jeff Maxwell and Kevin Munson? They have been very helpful to us in helping promote businesses and things, and I know they want the businesses to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
I have not asked specifically them because I thought that the space belonged to the city of University Heights.
Yeah, so I
Right.
think the idea, what I'm hearing is that you don't, we had this debate, I think, a while back, and I know the cost was, involved with cleaning it up. And so it seems like maybe this would be an opportunity for someone who is getting into this building to potentially look, if the council so desired, to potentially waive the fee, so long as there was cleanup afterward. I think that's what I'm hearing.
Well, I think also what we have to worry about is we have other organizations that are similarly positioned, just different activities, and we'd be setting precedent. And that's one of the things that we have to concern ourselves that we're not
Sylvia.
treating one group differently than another. So I think one of the things that would appease me would be if it's open as a community, free-wide, free access, or free and available to anyone who wants to come, regardless of whether it's part of your business portfolio or not. But even then, let's take a look at the rules, because I can't remember what they are, but I know, Nick, it's not just about cleanup. It's about treatment to other organizations, and I hate to be in a position where we, the city, are turning down one group of folks who don't own a spot in one UOP and having, accepted another group previously. So I think we need to come up with some fairness application here. So if we can work through those, I think maybe we can do pop-ups, but I'm not too sure about the routine. I mean, also, Maureen, tell me, are you thinking of 5:15, 5:30, or are we talking peak times? I mean, that could also change the way we shape the use of this community space if it's in hours that.
Yeah, so all the classes that I'm looking to teach are going to be during the weekday, during the day. So I'm trying to mirror what my schedule will be when I actually open, and those would be, shortly after school, the elementary schools and junior high and high schools start. So it would be mid-morning.
Mid-morning.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be looking at I'm just hearing what is being said and think that, someone who is trying to get into this building and, and has purchased a spot in the building. I mean, filling this building has been something that I guess I've looked at from the city council position as part of what we're trying to do here. You know, we want this to be full. And so, I don't know, when we had I brought this up early in the year, I think it was, and thought that we weren't utilizing this space enough. You know, we talked about fees, and my memory of that was that it was related to cleaning, which made sense. You know, if people are coming in here having birthday parties and, you know, there's all this stuff that we're paying to clean up, then that, you know, just thought this sounds like something that maybe is distinguishable. So if you're saying, you know, you'd look at that, then I think that's makes sense.
Louise, what, you had some other thoughts. I could read it from your face.
Oh, well, she hasn't checked yet with the developers, and they do have a workout area here on the premise.
Yeah,
And
I don't know if
like
I've
you to check
seen
with
it.
them.
Sure, I could certainly do that. Ideally, we have an open space in order to work. So if there's a lot of like fitness equipment, that may be
I understand, but
harder.
I think they want you to be successful. I
Mhm.
think they might work with you. They've been very good at working with us. And I'd like you to check that out, because I have concerns like Sylvia does about fairness.
Mhm.
And other people are gonna come to us about using the space. And how can we say yes to you and no to a resident that wants to use the space? Because
Sure.
we want you to be successful too. We do,
Mhm.
but they've been very helpful, and I'd like you to look into that. I think that would, I just feel like it's gonna be a positive thing, that they're gonna help you. They've told me how much they want the businesses, they turn down businesses that they don't think would be successful
Mhm.
here.
Mhm.
So I know they endorsed you, and so they really feel strongly about you, and so I think they'll work with you.
Okay. And if they were unwilling, should I reach back out to the council, and what would be the best way to do that?
Reach out back to Louise. She can
Sure.
filter it for us.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Nice to meet you. Would anyone else like to speak to the council? Thank you very much. We'll go on now. We want to get through some of these agenda items that we have people here for. And is it okay if we start with the engineer's report? Would council like to do that, or should we?
Yes, please.
I mean, usually,
I have a brief statement.
yes.
I mean, I was before the engineer's report. Okay. My committee report.
Okay, yeah, do you want to give your committee report?
Yeah.
Now we
Well,
can hear
first of all, the park is can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the park is complete. Jim will address that. If the weather permits, he will concrete this week. And then I talked to Josiah today, and I wish to be present for the next meeting of the Mid-America Palmer Boroughs agenda because I'm involved in Meadowscape, and I'm involved in that. So I've talked to Josiah about that. And then I also would make a recommendation that we use the money that we are going to receive from the purchase or the sale of the Olive Street houses for the work that is planned on Olive, so that Olive Court will be vintage, that we will have the streets, the sidewalks, the trees, everything done, and it'll be a model for what we plan on doing in other areas, and that is money well spent in the same location, so that we clean up Olive in its entirety, and then we can move on from there. So I would make a recommendation that that money that we get from the sale of the houses be kept on Olive Street. that is all I have.
Are there any questions for Dottie?
Dottie, you said the sidewalk is going to be replaced this week at Triangle Park?
Yeah, whatever for the spring. It's just this is for the winter, and then in the spring we'll have some plans.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Dottie, we'll go to Josiah's report now, okay? Thanks, Josiah.
Okay, since it's pulled up there, I've got a set of, excuse me. Can you hear me, Dottie?
Daddy, can you hear him?
Okay. So Olive Court improvements, I have a set of hard copy plans for everybody here after we go through, and Nate's got the PDFs up. So I was going to run through a summary of some of these design items on the plans and touch base with some of Mike's questions that he had. Nate, if you could just, can you go down page by page? Are you able to page down? If not, you could go to the...
Oh, I have a frozen, sorry.
Oh. Actually, once you go to that PDF up on that fourth tab, it says trees, or maybe it's the sketch one. Okay.
You have to work in concert.
I think I'll work from here at the moment. This is sort of an overview of the whole site. It's the easiest way to touch on a number of things. So the overall concept is that Olive Court is reconstructed and rebuilt from Melrose, which it would be on the right side of the page there. So in this orientation, north is to the right. So tying into Melrose Avenue on the right-hand side, continuing with the new roadway reconstruction all the way to the left or the south side, which would be the south city limit of University Heights. What this plan shows, fairly simply, is that the road gets rebuilt in the middle. Working with Virginia, we've got some proposed new tree replacements here on the street that are highlighted in green. And then sort of hatched in the reddish orange color down there is where we're designing for the permeable paver roadway system for the water quality component of the project. And then also you can see roughly that everybody who has a driveway onto Olive Court gets a new driveway apron connection to the new roadway. And this plan also shows new sidewalks on both sides of the street from Melrose all the way back, connecting to the Iowa City portion. Some of Mike's comments were, what's the present width of the street and what is the present width of the sidewalks? Right now there are 4-foot sidewalks on both sides of the street. And depending on where you stand right now and you measure the street, it's 18 to 19 feet, maybe. You, of course, are familiar with it. It's very rough on the edges and varies in and out as you go down. Let's jump here, Chris. Why don't you go to that combined PDF and go down a page, one more. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna run up here real quick.
Dottie won't hear you.
Okay, I'll just point something out. So this is the new street here, width, and I'll come back and talk about that. We've got a concrete street, typical concrete street, and we've got a section with permeable pavers with the stormwater chamber below. This width here is 23 feet on both of those.
So the curb to the first edging of the sidewalk is 23 feet?
No, the width of the street.
Oh, the width of the
Yeah, from back at curb to back at curb is 23. And like I said, the existing road's about 19.
And what's the distance between the edge of the curb and the
Sidewalk,
sidewalk?
about 7.5 feet on each side.
So that seems to me like it's making everyone's front yards really small. Is there any way we could push the sidewalks closer to the curb?
Well, the sidewalks now would be basically going back in the exact same location.
Same location?
Yeah.
The front
Yeah.
yards are not getting smaller. It's the median between the street and the sidewalk that's getting smaller.
Okay.
Yeah, if that makes,
As long as
yeah.
we get
So,
the-
so the city's right away for the street
Right.
is the
I
same.
just don't want
yeah.
front yards getting smaller for homeowners.
Correct, yeah. So the planned width of the new roadway is 23 feet from back of curb to back of curb. The reason we came up with that was, one, it's a narrow right-of-way. Olive is now, so there's not a lot of room, obviously. So we've gone down to what are the minimum, sort of the minimum standards for the roadway width on the statewide urban design standards and the AASHTO guidelines, which is 10-foot wide lanes for driving. And then we need to have a curb on there, which is 1.5 feet or 18 inches minimum. So we got two 10-foot lanes, that's 20, two 1.5 inch or 1.5 foot curbs, that's 3. So that's how we get to our 23.
Will there be a lip on the curb?
There will be. It's not the standard curb you'd see, the 6-inch. We're going with the 4-inch, like sloped curb here, and that's because in a lot of the sections out there, all of the street and the sidewalks now are almost level in certain respects, and so as you know, there's no curbs, so all the water just runs down the edges. So we need the curbs to hold the pavers in and also to hold the water in, but we don't want to have the curb so high that it flows back towards everybody's sidewalk. So we're dropping the curb height a little bit, and then we're dropping the street a few inches as well to maintain that drainage towards the street. So going back, so stay on with that description. So a 23-foot wide street, as I mentioned, about 7.5 feet of green space, and then new sidewalks on both sides. Right now, the way they're shown on that plan and in this section is to have 5-foot sidewalks put back instead of the 4 that are there now. 4 is the minimum ADA requirement for width. 5 is the sort of the current standard for municipalities for replacement of new sidewalks is going to 5 feet. That's what's shown right now. Mike's other question was about temporary construction easements or acquisition. If you could go back, Chris, please, to that sketch. Can you zoom in at all? A couple clicks, just sort of in the middle. Okay, so on that, what would be the east side of the road or the bottom side of the sketch there? Most of those properties have the driveway access in the back alley, but they all have sidewalks and connections up front. So the only thing we're looking at the moment is, as far as temporary construction easement, is likely some temporary construction easement to come back and connect the new sidewalk to those walks that come from the front of the house. It just works better if you can go back a couple panels, 2 or 3 panels, and make that tie-in clean with the new sidewalk.
Since we're installing so many new sidewalks, have you double-checked and triple-checked that those tree roots aren't going to be disruptive, but are rather soft-rooted, or, you know, I don't want trees compromising the quality of the cement, is what I'm interested in.
A little bit. So I've been talking with Virginia about the tree selection. A lot of the trees that we have in town now are the ones that get to be 24, 36, 48-inch diameter trunks. My understanding is that's not the case here. We're looking at trees that are defined as
The species
street trees.
mix that I chose for replacements is largely smaller at maturity trees, not enormous silver maples like we have on that street right now. So I think sidewalk interference is going to be less of a problem, but of course you can't eliminate it down to 0.
Right, but can you at least give some assurances, especially since you're in the tree business, that they're soft-rooted? Because I know there's a difference between trees that have soft roots versus those that don't, and how they create friction or not with the structure.
I think shallow rooting trees is really what the concern is more, which would be like sycamores and silver maples, and we haven't used any sycamore or silver maple.
Okay, so you are taking, I just want
Yeah.
extreme, we're about to invest a lot of money on this street, and I want all these details double-checked and triple-checked, because it's a big investment, and for us to be ripping it out because we didn't think about it is just something we shouldn't have to go through if we can avoid it. So.
Yeah, that's definitely been the intent here, is to find trees that are well-defined urban street trees for this type of situation.
All right.
Virginia, is the city automatically just gonna put those trees in like in front of 20 Court? Or if we get the homeowner don't want trees in front?
I don't personally want to be exempting people from having trees, but I guess that would be a council decision. I don't know. You don't want trees?
Okay,
I leave that up for further discussion here.
I think the answer is for discussion on that.
And maybe case by case.
Maybe.
So right now, we're
Maybe
not
we can
looking at
talk about
any,
it. Maybe we can make an adjustment. I don't know.
Like someone has to get up there and clean out the gutters and all that stuff, but you know.
Well, if they're not that tall, right?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to end up. I can't remember exactly what we picked for 20 Olive Court, but for the most part, you see, we put one on each side of the walk there, so you get like a nice sort of welcoming effect to the house. But they're not going to get that large. They're not going to get over your house. There's not really going to be a tree that reaches over the house and drops things into the gutter, if that makes sense. Because we're really narrowing the width of the public right-of-way there, and so you just can't put a tree that's going to get as big as a sycamore in a 7.5-foot space. It won't work. So it's mostly, we picked some crab apples. You know, you're not going to get crab apples in your gutters. They can't reach that far.
the mature heights are probably more like
Around like 25 feet.
20 to 25.
Um,
Trunk line that runs down the middle of that street, or is it a sidewalk, or do you know what I'm saying?
The sanitary sewer's in the middle. Yeah.
And how about the main lines into these homes?
The service lines.
Yeah. Can you double check on that? Because I hate to have a crash of someone's service line because of a tree root.
We can do as much as we can, which is we get the service maps from Iowa City, and
Can
they.
you do an overlay and just confirm that you've done an overlay?
Yeah.
Those trees are
Yeah.
not around the sewer main line. And if not, we're going to have Gulf view issues like people have been reporting, and I don't think we need to duplicate that.
Yeah.
The water line does come in from the front of Olive Court, because between 16 Olive Court and the Blue House, so Jim can testify to this, the water line busted, and that ran right out to the street.
That's right. Dottie, can you work with Josiah on making sure that that overlay for main pipes is accomplished and report back on January?
Yeah, that would be sewer services and water main services.
I think that's a great idea.
do you have more, Josiah, or can I ask some questions about street width?
Go ahead. Well, let me
I'll let you
just finish these
yeah.
out here. So we're not really looking for any property acquisitions or right-of-way acquisition, other than these temporary construction to connect the walks. You asked about schedule and football parking. The schedule is to bid this in February and March, so they can start construction in April. And they will have a substantial completion deadline in advance, at the end of August, before the first football game. So did I touch on?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
Okay. So what about other questions from the council on?
So what happens if we don't widen the street to 23 feet? What happens if we just keep it at 18? I mean, like, do we get, is there does that present some kind of safety concern? Do we like lose
Lose
federal
bike
grant
lanes.
money? I mean,
I want to know, do we lose bike lanes?
there's no bike lanes on this
No,
street.
but with 23, could we have and do we lose?
Could we have bike lanes?
I'm
No.
hearing from
No.
folks right now that a lot of bikers are on the on the sidewalks, and we're missing an opportunity here to not, leave some.
Bike lanes would be an additional
The speed,
5 to 5.5
I mean,
feet on each side.
the speed
So it
limit
would-
on Olive Court,
It would be down to no green space.
the speed
you know
limit
what I
on
mean?
Olive Court is 10 miles per hour. That is a speed limit that is compatible with not having bike lanes at all, and bikes and cars just sharing a single lane. A bike can go much faster than 10 miles per hour. So you don't need a segregated bike lane on a street that's 10 miles per hour. My concern is that the design standards that we're using are for a minimum of 25 miles per hour. So we're designing a street that's meant to be traveled at 25 miles per hour. The speed limit is 10 miles per hour. We already get complaints of people speeding down Olive Court. Of course, they're not University Heights residents. Of course, they're people that live in Iowa City. But when you widen the street like that, humans are humans. You're going to drive the speed that it feels safe to drive, no matter what the speed limit is. So I don't think it's a good idea to widen it to 23. And I want to know, I mean, if it's just a matter of meeting some kind of state standards, we have other streets that.
I want to know about parking. These residents have active families, active lifestyles.
Okay, can we answer one question at a time before we move on to
I'm
parking?
going to ask for him to also address that one. Maybe as he addresses yours, he can
Okay,
distinguish it with this.
so Gulfview Avenue has
No, I wanna
on-street
hear us.
parking.
I want to hear from Josiah why.
I'm not quite done yet. Gulfview Avenue has on-street parking. It has curbs. It's only 21 feet wide. Grand Avenue has on-street parking. It has curbs. It's only 21 feet wide. I don't understand why we would go all the way to 23 feet wide. I think you're going to really lose a lot of the charm of that street. I don't think it's a good idea. I think we should go as narrow as possible.
If we can get parking, if folks can get off-street parking and have it well-defined as part of the completion of this project, I'm perfectly fine with leaving it at 23. I'm not too concerned about the speed limit, because quite frankly, I didn't even know that there's a difference between your street, which is 21, and Olive Court, which would go up to 23. That's a 5-foot difference. Not much when you're looking at the grand scheme of perspective down the road.
Mhm.
I care more about the parking. I want to know, will these folks have adequate parking? If they haven't had it in the past, I think it's an obligation of this council to solve parking issues for them now, because we have the opportunity to create the space. So we shouldn't just look at speed. We need to look at speed. We need to look at parking. What
Do
else?
residents
What
of
other
Olive
factors?
Court want on-street parking?
Well,
I think the ones on West,
Okay.
on the
Well,
west side.
On
I
Kozer,
haven't
I would
heard
not
that.
want on-street parking.
I haven't heard that request before.
Yeah. It's nice to have a street that doesn't have on-street parking, actually.
if you had on-street parking over there, you'd have a bunch of hospitals, boys, and everybody else putting their,
Mhm.
and having them monitored, the one on-street parking over there.
Okay.
There's no on-street parking now, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So was it planned for there to be on-street parking with the street widener, or was
No,
the plan for it
no.
to remain no parking?
There was no intention by the
Oh.
design to provide space for on-street parking.
Okay.
The,
I mean-
the design was, it's a narrow street, we don't want to lose the green space. There are design standards for roads. What's the narrowest they have, acceptable design standards? So your question is, well, what if we don't do it? What happens to
Do we
us?
have to adhere to design standards, or can we,
I don't know the
keep
answer to
an
that.
18-foot street, an
Is your
18-foot
grant
street?
jeopardized? You have a grant application for 75,000. Does that 75,000 jeopardize if that street is not up to standard, which you're saying is 25, unless there's an exception to 25?
23 is our minimum.
Mhm.
You know, that funding application was more for the water quality, stormwater quality component only on that. So I don't think there's a connection there.
Can you check? Because I'd hate to lose 75,000 on account of 5 feet. I mean, if they're assuming that we're going to be building up to whatever standard codes
Mhm.
are, and those standard codes that happen to be 23 and not 18 or any other
I mean, I do
combination.
know there would be a direct correlation, because that design for that permeable paver system is sized like that to treat a certain stormwater event, the minimum for the quality. So that road would get longer.
Yeah,
That's
so
fine.
like, can we take, if we were to shave down the sides, can we add that paving?
I mean,
to
I
the-
think it's a good question, is if we
Okay.
don't want to meet the minimum design standards, so what? I've never asked
I guess
that
I'd like to
question.
get more feedback from the neighbors on this. I've heard from a couple people that their top concern is that they don't want the street widened. We don't have anybody who's asked for the street to be widened. So it's like, who are we doing this for? To meet somebody else's standards when we ourselves don't actually want that.
Yeah,
And I want-
I have a sense it's going to come down to probably emergency access, and I think they will have a say in that answer. And so maybe that answer is, you could go to 9 instead of 10, but maybe it's 10.
Okay.
Maybe it's something happens and half the road gets blocked. We need to be able to get around, and so
I mean,
my
this road,
my sense
I
is
think,
that
is a
that's
special
probably where that
because
comes
it has
from.
another exit. But okay,
Maybe.
how do we get an answer to that?
I can find that answer. Yeah.
Okay.
Josiah, where will this stormwater run off to? One of the issues that the houses on Olive Court have, on a heavy rain, when the storm waters that the storm sewers that we have presently can't handle water, we get water that comes up from the floor in the basement.
Are you talking about the east side of the homes?
Well, I don't know where the water comes from, like at 20 Olive Court, 16, 24, all these houses on a real heavy rain get some water in the basements. Usually when, Melrose is kind of, got standing water over there in front of Stella's and stuff. Where will the water run off to all of this?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what is the permeable paver thing all about, really? That's part of this. So that area that's shaded in reddish there, so those are the permeable pavers like you see out here in the parking areas. They're on several different layers of rock, and then there's a storage underneath it. So as you know, now there's no stormwater collection or anything on all of it. Just all runs down the sides until it hits Melrose. So once that water hits that shaded area, that's going to start pouring into those pavers and does a couple of things. One, the water quality component is that it cleans the runoff because it goes through the different layers of rock. The other one is it provides storage. So there's, 2 or 3 feet under there. So that water will be able to be stored in there and release more slowly. It's eventually going to go to the same system. There's nowhere else to go. So the system now is the intakes on Melrose to the right-hand side, and then it goes into the piping system and out to the railroad tracks. And this will still connect there. But I would say, I would think this may have no impact on what's going on in the basement of those houses. But basically you're going from having no stormwater collection to a third of the streets now going to act as a collection system to pull water in from the right-of-way. Yeah. So but the basements may be well below that. And so I can't say for sure, but I don't have any concern that this will make that worse.
Josiah, the pavers, as I understand it, are contingent on funding from a grant, correct? So if we don't get the grant, how much does the city, what's the difference between doing a non-paver version and a paver version?
Yeah, I'll find that out. I got
Okay, 'cause
that question today. I haven't broken that down.
Okay, good,
that
because
question.
that's super important. I think we're presuming that we're gonna do this without knowing what our financing. This whole entire project is going to be a debt acquisition for the city. It's gonna be loaned money, not money that we have sitting around. We don't have much. We have very little. And-
Bonded?
Yeah, so
Yep.
it's gonna have to be debt. We're gonna have to go to bonding, and I want to know, without pavers, what does this cost look like? And with the pavers. So I'm really rooting for the city, and I'm really excited that the application for grant funding was put together in time for us to compete for an award. So let's hope we get it, and how soon do you think you can get us an answer? I know the funding organization will get back to us in January.
Correct.
So you'll have some estimation of pavers, how much it cost, and then the no paver version, right?
Yeah, yep,
Okay,
definitely.
in January.
Yep.
Good, okay.
I had 2 more questions. Have you given any thoughts to putting some pedestrian level streetlights at the beginning of the street where you come in off Melrose? Isn't there a plan to kind of do that all along Melrose for the Melrose Streetscape project? And would we want to go ahead and do that as a part of this project on Olive Court?
Could you scan over to the right a little bit towards Melrose. Yeah. So the question was, should we look at putting some pedestrian scale lights by the Melrose intersection with this project?
A little lamp here and there as you enter the street.
Yeah, I did look at that as part of basically trying to coordinate this project with the future Melrose streetscape project. And I don't think we should right now.
Okay,
Those lights are, I mean, they're fairly expensive, and it's got a footing, and I mean, it's a pretty big deal. So I think that should be part of the Melrose streetscape widening.
Okay.
As far as lighting goes here, right now there's a Mid-American has a street light in the middle of the street. It's sort of like between tree 17 and 18 there on the lower side. It gets fed between those houses from the east, and then they have a street light up at the top of the hill, and there's one at the intersection. And so we're gonna talk to Mid-American about the possibility of adding 2 more street lights.
Hello?
Closer.
Hello?
I couldn't, who's talking? I can't hear.
Flip it the other way.
There's some discussion about the street, but I can't hear it.
Are you guys recommending where you want those new streetlights to go? Or is it at their discretion?
I'm gonna talk to them and see what they can do, but
Okay.
the idea would be, right now there's one at the bottom, top, and middle, and to have 2 in between to.
Yeah, I
Do
think
we
that'd be a good
have,
idea.
a copy of what the vision program recommended? 'Cause I think there's a section on Olive Court that the vision program recommended spacing of certain pedestrian level lighting. And that's what I'm supporting with this Olive Court renovation.
Yep,
Just
that's
to be
what I had
super
in mind.
clear, let's get this right from the beginning to the middle and the end. Let's put in streets, let's put in curbs, let's put in sidewalks, lighting, and let's get it done. And let's not do piecemeal. We have to, this is a good investment for the community, a good investment in this area. So I want to see lighting. So do you have access to the visioning program information, Josiah?
I do, yeah.
Can you please?
So there's some details of that sometimes makes it tough to implement ahead of the one. Like, for example, what type of fixtures get put in?
That shouldn't be, so long as you tell us where they're going to go, I think council can move forward with
So
aesthetic
that's
selection.
Yeah. So I mean, it becomes a tough thing for people to select what lights they want
I don't like
because
that.
it needs to because they'll want to match it on Melrose, and so we can definitely do that. One idea, I guess, what I was thinking when we talked to Mid-American, because they can go in and put in poles, and basically it gets added to your monthly bill.
But it's ugly.
And then when you get to the Melrose Streetscape project, when you have lights and you have a lot of lights that you're bidding, many street lights, and you know what type they want to be, it would not be difficult for them to bore in an electric line. Mid-America comes and takes their pole out, and you could have your contractor put in your pole, the one you've
would be like
picked.
space saver poles, so to speak, until we
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah. I guess that's my recommendation at this point, because that lighting issue is, it's like what type, and I want that type, and is that going to work over here? And also on the Melrose project, you will have much more electrical and lighting, so you may get better.
A better deal with all
Yeah.
the order, sure. Economy of scale, I like that. Okay.
I had one other comment. So this sidewalk here crossing the entrance is a really heavily used pedestrian corridor. Is there anything we can do to make that intersection a little bit more pedestrian friendly, like extending the curbs out slightly so that the travel distance is shorter?
We can't extend the curbs out anymore. I mean,
Okay.
a lot of times you see the curbs get extended out when you have a street that has parking, and then they take that parking space and bump
They
it
narrow it
in.
in.
But this would be like, it's already bumped in.
Okay.
Because it's so narrow. We did make the returns on the corners a little more narrow as well, so that helps shorten that distance also.
Okay.
And Josiah, I don't know what the cost would be, but has the city ever considered the either motion activated or pedestrian to push the button, and the sign is the pedestrian crossing. It also has the 2 LED flashing yellow lights alerting drivers only when there's pedestrians using the crosswalk, just as a more to make the motoring public more aware that someone is actually in the crosswalk as opposed to just a general sign. I don't know what the added cost would be. I think they're right around, they're a couple $1,000s a piece, but
Yeah, they are.
Just an option.
So it's like it's a rapid rectangular flashing beacon, right?
yeah,
It
so it has
flashes
the,
yellow.
Yeah, the two
Yeah.
LED lights that flash, and then it just has a sign,
Yeah.
the general sign that the pedestrian crossing sign that's at those intersections.
I don't think that the sidewalk crossing of Olive at the intersection would be the spot for that. I mean, it's typically like a high usage, like mid-block crossing or something where you're not at a typical crossing location.
Oh, that was the point that Virginia was trying to make, that it was a high traveled area that we wanted.
Yeah, I don't think
That
that's the
seems
right
like an idea
usage
for
of
like
that.
maybe going across Melrose. I was just talking about
Oh, just
crossing.
on Olive.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought you were
Yeah.
talking about, going across Melrose.
No, sorry, that wasn't clear.
I think that going across Melrose needs to be checked with MPOJC. We don't want to have unintended consequences with their traffic.
Could we?
Yes,
I
go
know
ahead.
there's a lot
Yeah.
of important questions, but could we keep moving this on?
Yep, I don't have any other big items unless there's other
Well, you
questions
wanted to talk about,
for this.
So
Okay.
I
The
motion,
timeline.
I motion consideration of resolution 18-58, authorizing the mayor.
We haven't
to
got
sign.
to that yet.
that's,
Oh,
Can we move
Okay.
on to that one?
Are you
no,
doing-
not yet.
No, just so we're gonna have an open house on December 17th. Is that correct?
yeah,
Is
so
there a time for that?
4 to 8 in this space on December 17th.
So we can talk with people more about the street width at that point. Sound good?
Yeah, the intent is to we'll have some easels and things and people can stop by.
Okay.
I'll work with you on getting some contacts and things to get the word out. And if we need another event after that, we could do that or meet with people individually. So
Okay.
What time is it at?
4 to 8. It'll be a chance. You can just come by whenever your schedule allows and talk one-on-one.
Open
And
house.
yeah,
Between 4 to 8.
what else do you have?
Josiah, are you done with this so we can switch?
Yes. Thanks.
Okay, so you're going to get those questions answered for council.
Correct. Yeah.
And then your next subject is the snow contract?
Yep. I sent out a report last week with a revised snow contract, a couple changes after talking with Mark Phelps. And I can go over those again here, or if you guys
I
are
don't think
okay.
it's necessary.
Okay.
Everybody's read it, right?
The only question I have for you is, are we benchmarking market value for services rendered, cost to value received? Because I don't see that we've solicited any other bids or opened this up for public bidding. So I'd like to have some background as to how long we've had this contract on the books since the last time we went out looking for.
Yeah, the last time we did was when Mark won that bidding
2
process.
years? Is it 2 years?
3, I think, because he had a 1-year contract and then
Oh,
a 2-year.
1 year and now 2.
Yep.
Because he's in his second year.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so 1 more year, and then this probably should go out to the market to shop value for service.
Yeah, but also he hasn't raised his rates.
This this contract was modeled after the last one, which is a 2-year extension. As I noted in here, the one change is we went from October end date to the following May, just to make sure we get covered through the full winter season, and then we have several months to update it instead of a month possibly.
So is there a motion for resolution
I
19?
motion adoption.
Okay, motion by Sylvia, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Virginia. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Dottie, we're going to vote on the snow contract, okay? Casada?
Aye.
Herbold? Maher? We're voting, Dottie, we're voting on the snow contract. Are you in favor or not?
I can't hear you.
I'm talking. Listen.
What am I voting for?
You want to say it?
Dottie, you're voting for the snow contract. Do you want to support it or not?
I do.
Yes, she does. It's a yes.
Thank you. Moore?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, so now we'll go to sidewalk repair project.
Chris, I'll hold it for you because you can't triple check. I can't do it.
Thank you.
You reported in your,
Fine.
about that this is the,
I assume this is a follow-up from the last meeting on the different types of repairs and the values
Right.
of each
You
and
had
how
some
many.
information to give to council. There are some questions to be
Well,
answered.
so one of the questions we asked was what's the total cost if the city was just to do this whole repair program this year at the city's cost and not at the homeowner cost, and it came out to be about $19,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, for those type A and type B panels.
That's right.
So my feeling on this, if we're at that point, is we should just cancel this program for the year. I think we are close enough to having new revenue from the Marriott that we should just wait for that to go through a sidewalk repair program and use Marriott money to pay for it.
Where is where was this quadrant? Is it any within proximity to Olive Court?
Yeah, it's the southeast portion of the city. So
Point it out to me, please.
it extends from the railroad tracks and the Marriott, Olive Court, Lemur, George Street over to, so it's between Sunset and the east side. It's basically east of Sunset and south of Melrose.
And that's the entire.
That's that
area
quadrant.
That's the quadrant that is now up for 19,000 in improvements. Okay. I believe that we should continue on schedule. Every time that this council or any prior or future councils gets off of the scheduled, it just falls off, it doesn't come back in, and it takes a lot. And by that time, you've lost momentum, you've lost interest and consistency. And I think we can use some of the Olive Court money that we're generating from the two houses. 19,000 is nothing compared to what we're gonna have to bond for anyway, just to cover all of the expenses on that street.
The problem is that doing that $19,000 worth of repairs is just replacing one panel here, one panel there, one panel here. And so while the panels meet up like this, you have entire blocks that are going up and down and up and down. And so I don't think this is the right way to handle sidewalk repairs in the future if we're going to be funding them as a city. I think what you need to do is prioritize which blocks are the worst and take out the entire block at the time and replace the entire block. I think replacing one panel at a time.
Sidewalk repairs,
Sorry, Lisa, you go
estimated
ahead.
value of $19,000 from Josiah to cover the costs of this round's, sidewalks that need to be fixed.
So I talked to Dottie earlier, and I think let's give Dottie a chance to say something here because she had a suggestion.
So I think the money on Olive should stay on Olive.
Dottie, this is about what we talked about on the sidewalk repair, just canceling this until we can reassess and do entire sections of sidewalk at one time.
So we're going to keep it the way it is for the time being? Is that what you're saying?
We're going to cancel this particular repair project because it's just one panel here and two panels there, and it's not addressing the overall problem with our sidewalks.
So you're talking about the overall sidewalks situation. All over the plans that have been in place in the past. Am I correct?
Anyway,
It's asking you.
Is that a question?
That is a question.
So Dottie, what we talked about was instead of replacing one panel and two panels, that you wanted to wait until we had revenue to just replace entire sections.
I can't hear you. What I recommended was that the money that we're making on the houses stay on Olive for the projects that we have there for the streets and sidewalks.
Okay, so she's basically nixing my idea, saying she's not interested in having the 20K go into any repairs, so out
Okay.
the idea.
Okay. But canceling the repair project until we can address the overall problem instead of one panel here, one panel there.
Postponing, because you guys do want to pick up.
Well, you can use whatever word, but not going forward with this.
I only feel comfortable if we have a plan and the plan comes in the first or second quarter of next year. If it's going to take another year, another 2 years for this council to decide how it's going to fix sidewalks or not, I'm not interested in delay tactics.
This is not really
It's done.
fixing the sidewalks, though. It's fixing this one panel that's not even, if you go out and walk, that's not even necessarily the problem. It's
So can I
not
ask a quick
fixing the
question for
problem.
Josiah? So I guess I like the idea of being more efficient and replacing larger areas, but I am concerned about safety in the short term. I know that was part of what, I think that was part of what we were looking at is, you know, the A and B, labels. And I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of what safety concerns we maybe have for tripping, that sort of thing.
Well, and I think that was the purpose from last discussion on the type A and B repairs. Type A were those vertical deflections,
Right. And then,
tripping hazards, and then B was the ponding where you can get ice and things melting.
so is there, I think Virginia maybe brought up the idea of shaving off some of the trip hazards and maybe moving soil, dirt to get the others to drain. Is that something that we can do at a lower cost just to get by for a while? I mean, is that?
What are you talking about, Nancy?
But we're just talking about whether we're going to have safety issues with postponing replacing these pieces of sidewalk.
I'm with Lisa on this. I think we're throwing good money after bad, and then we just need to have an overall plan for the entire city and do all of the sidewalks. In fact, and just roll it over into a big bond and do it right and not throw good money away.
I think at a minimum, we can just,
All we're doing is patching, and we are assessing the landlords for the cost of this, which I don't think is fair. Because not everybody has a sidewalk, not everybody's going to have to pay.
I think it's
I think
perfectly fair to say that we can postpone this round for 2 years because we're supposed to be on a 6-year inspection cycle, and this round was done just 4 years ago. And so if we're looking at fairness, we're hitting these people 2 years before we're really supposed to be. And I think in 2 years, the financial picture is going to look so different that it's just not going to make sense to pursue this plan anymore.
Yeah.
I just think it's a bad plan.
I don't disagree with, I don't think I disagree with anything Virginia or Dottie said. I think to me, it's just a matter of, do we need to have kind of more handyman work done in the short term? Have someone go around, look for water that's standing, try to, move some soil, shave off trip hazards just to make do, and then, start the plan when we start the plan. But
As long as we have all the issues that we have, I can't see that it's wise to spend that money now. Nothing is going to change until we decide to get on board and do a program overhaul. And nobody is at risk. I mean, it's the trees that have caused the problem with the sidewalks. They're like roller coasters. And, once we start doing the sidewalks, cutting the tree roots, we're going to have some tree demise also. So I think it's a big city project, and it's going to be worthy of buying again.
So I'll make a motion to postpone the sidewalk repair program until 2020.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Virginia, second by Lisa. Any further discussion?
So my discussion is just, I guess Josiah, I don't know is it such a thing to go around and shave off some trip hazards I'm not saying it's your job, I'm just saying, is there someone who would do that?
Yeah, Russ.
Is it something that, I don't know if Russ has the equipment or not to shave off, but
I would say probably does not, but yes, there's sidewalk grinding, there's contractors that come and grind it down.
do you have a
And-
sense of the cost of that at all based on the A and B,
I don't. I mean, I think we actually had that as an option maybe 12 years ago or something like that. And it's an option now. If you have a problem and you want to do it yourself, you can have a contractor come and grind it down, as long as it's long enough. Because you get people that'll just do a little grind, smooth out a bump. But we've got some specs on how far back it needs to be.
It might be a separate matter, but I mean, that also could be a citywide thing that's part of this program leading up to bigger replacements that we have, inspection and get it done.
I asked Josiah this question outside of a council meeting, and the answer he gave me then was that it's for the city to get into grinding sidewalks can be a little risky because you don't know exactly what's going to happen when you take a grinder to a sidewalk. Like the whole thing can crumble, and then you've really messed up somebody's sidewalk, and you're going to have to deal with that. So it's not as straightforward as you might think. It opens up a lot of risk. You don't know how much of the sidewalk is there left because it's hard to tell how much has been ground out before sometimes, and so it
also gets really smooth. If you think about when you grind sidewalks, it gets really smooth, and if you have to grind it far enough back, it's a big smooth section, which can be slippery. But anyway, I think, like Iowa City, Coralville, we let you do it if you do it yourself. But as far as I can tell, looking at everybody's program, once they do it, they're like, we're not going to mess with it. We're going to take it out, replace it, be done with it. So
If
the
you
answer to your
walk
question
around-
is yes, it could be done.
So it sounds like
But it might cause
the
some
option would
problems
be
then.
more, I mean, a homeowner doesn't have a lot of incentive to do it themselves if they're not faced with the decision of either grinding or replacing. I would see that be something if they were faced with replacing, they would say, well, yeah, maybe I'll just grind it and save some money, but, okay.
I think if you walk around, we mark these things, but when you're walking in real life, they aren't really such a horrible trip hazard. And there are other things, as we've discussed, that aren't part of the criteria. They don't get marked, and they are something that you would stumble over, but we don't mark them. So I just think it's part of walking on a sidewalk. You pay attention to what you're doing. And
Do you want Josiah to look more into those specifics or at this time?
Yeah.
Or, because I think we can go ahead with voting on postponement
Postponing.
and then look into the safety that you pointed out, Nick.
Yeah, I'm ready to vote.
Okay.
I'd like to have Josiah look into it.
Okay, you can look into some of that for next meeting. And so, there's a motion and a second to postpone till 2020, 2 years. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
What is the motion?
It's to postpone the sidewalk project, repair project, till 2020.
Okay. I vote yes.
Okay, thank you, Dottie. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thanks, Josiah. Is there something else? Did,
I just want to make sure, so what we'll need to do is provide some sort of follow-up letter to the properties that have got letters and notify them of this. So is that something you want to do or you want me to do, or as far as drafting it, or, I mean, we obviously have all the addresses, but,
Give it to Dottie, she's got time.
okay.
It'll be cheaper than engineer rate.
Okay.
Dottie, you're in charge of sending out cancellation notices to all the homeowners by January.
Great, give me the list.
Thank you, Dottie. Thank you.
See what happens when you're not at the table?
Yeah, I get downtown.
Okay, now, let's make a decision here of where to go next. We can go to Resolution 1849 under police chief, under police report, or do you want to go to discussion of regulating vehicles and speeds on city sidewalks?
Could we talk about the sidewalks just
Can we-
Art can.
Can we,
figure for
I
that.
want to.
Can we skip ahead?
Ordinance
Sorry, and come back. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. We do have Art here too.
I think with the sidewalks issue, I'm gonna need to, I would like to not keep Art through the 235 discussion. And also, I think I'm gonna need to do more work before we put together a proposed ordinance. I was just kind of curious to get general feedback, and if, while Art's here, if there's questions for him while we're talking, I think that would be helpful. I mean, I'm interested in, this is kind of reverse order, but I'm interested in signage that would put people on notice of our rules. So then, obviously, I think it would be good to have some rules. I'm hearing from Art about, what those rules could involve. I want to look at the other sample ordinances that he's referencing. I think
What are we talking about?
We're talking about any limitations we want to put on sidewalks. We heard some public comment about people riding bikes fast, maybe being rude, maybe talk about motorized vehicles. So I think the issue is really, the basics, I think, are speed and whether we're going to allow motorized vehicles on sidewalks. And I'd be curious to hear what anybody else says, and then I would.
Nick, I would also like to have you look into the state recommendations for bikers and the clothing that they should be wearing. Because if we're going to put them out on the streets, where they should be and are now, they need to have the kind of lighting on their bodies so that motor vehicles will see that there is a cyclist in the street ahead of them. Because when they are all black at 7 in the morning, you cannot see them. And it is a danger, danger, danger. So you need to check with the state. I think there are rules that are not being followed.
He said he'd look more into it, Dottie, so I think he'll look
Okay.
into that. Thank you. Does anyone else want to comment on this?
Nope, I just want to have access to what else other cities are doing. I know Art did some of his own homework with Cedar Rapids and other cities that are on top of this issue, and I want to see what levels they may have.
And Art, I just wanted to respond to your comment earlier. So when you sent the email, Nick and I, generally in those situations, if you send it to both of us, we'll get together and sit down and go over that, and just one of us will respond rather than a duplicated response. We'll figure out what we can do to address the issue and go from there. So I apologize you didn't get a separate email from me, but Nick and I did discuss that prior to him sending you that email back. Yes, sir.
And I was copied on it, and I didn't respond to you either, Art, but,
I expected you to.
well,
I understand.
I kind of knew you would expect it from me, and I'm sorry.
Getting a response was
Yeah.
and I did get that.
Thank you for checking more into this, Nick, and we'll move on to consideration of resolution number 1849, supporting initiatives to correct for implicit bias.
Actually, Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
can we please do
you wanna
ordinance
do
235 first?
Okay, so we're going to start with ordinance 235, and Nick's going to start.
Yeah, I'm sorry for all the emails, and I don't know who's on email right now.
I'm not.
Okay, so I don't have anything printed out. Betty's here. I don't know, Betty, if you want to give any, I guess that's maybe the mayor's role to ask you to come forward, but I just, we worked together over this. We got some kind of, recent feedback, and then today we've updated things further. I've emailed council and you the most recent drafts that I have. I don't know if the rest of the council is in the position to have read that, but while you're here, I would just be curious if you want to talk through the major changes, which is, I think the biggest change being the last meeting, I think we were basically agreed on everything except for whether we should ban all pretextual stops. And then Virginia and I and Nate had a phone conference with you and Kevin and some others, and you kind of explained the line that you were suggesting, which was banning discriminatory pretextual stops. I had explained to you that that was in one of my previous drafts. I found that it was repetitive. I thought you made a good point in explaining, that because of the specific history with discriminatory pretextual stops, you thought it was worth emphasizing that in the ordinance. And so that is one of the updates, I think, that is probably the biggest since the last meeting.
That's right. It's the significant material update, and I want to thank the many residents who rushed to make that comment at the end. It didn't come out naturally from council, and I do want to thank the many active residents in our community who are keeping a good eye on this ordinance. We also had a couple of new changes, but Betty, you do us the honor of walking us through them. And I did also want to ask if you could also walk us through the 2280 that you shared with Nick and Virginia and Nate, and the purpose, because Nick, I want to make a last minute addition to the intent of ordinance 235. There's good language, and I'll share it with you, but I think Betty will pick up on it as well.
Okay. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank everyone. I know that there was a lot of discussion at the last meeting, and after Kevin spoke with me, I asked you to delay this vote just so that we could, to reveal our motive is we wanted to make sure that to the best of our ability that this ordinance comports with the work that we're doing all over the state and at the legislature. And so what we tried to do is provide some clarity, specifically around the discriminatory pretextual stops. We also added several other definitions, and just to add clarity to what you're trying to do. It looked like it was pretty much already set out in terms of those things, but we think that that clarity is extremely important. And I also appreciate the meeting, Nick, Virginia, Nate, with our legal redress team and then myself. So thank you for that. In terms of the changes to the documents that were sent out, I believe earlier today, not a terrible lot of significant changes, but the one thing, a couple things that I wanted to just kind of start from the beginning, and I don't have the latest printed version either, so I'm kind of pulling things together. Number one, the title. Who is on email? Just curious. Okay, so title slightly different. We're suggesting that it's the title be relating to prohibiting racial and other profiling, law enforcement, implicit bias, and other training, data reporting, and establishment of Citizens Advisory Board. The reason that we are making this request is at first read, your title could possibly be misconstrued. So currently it reads relating to law enforcement training against implicit bias, data reporting, et cetera, but you are not training against implicit bias. And then we also thought it was important to make clear that this is a ordinance against racial profiling and other profiling. So that's why we are suggesting that title change. I did submit to Nick a little bit of a change for the intent. However, he did point out that it is in the resolution, which is fine, but I also think that it is, worth a review by the council. I know that Sylvia, you wanted to point that out.
Right, I do, because that was also mentioned by ACLU. And I think that right now our ordinance reads that we want to make this a safe community, but I think for the sake of Nate, we also want to have a community that trusts our police department. So that direction of relationship building needs to be reflected. So if we could just incorporate, let me see if I can even turn on my, if we can incorporate a slight language to the effect of, right after it says, a safe community for all, comma, to foster trust and cooperation with law enforcement, comma, provide for the collection of pertinent data, et cetera. I don't think it takes away from the intent, it just builds it. It says we want a safe community and we want our cops to feel that they're fostering a trust and they're building cooperation.
If you go down, Chris.
Yep, and I totally get it that it's in the resolution, but, so the resolution also says safe community, so I'm not in favor of completely eviscerating from section 1 the language.
Is that where you want it?
So it's the last whereas, I think, is the language.
Yeah, and part of it is, Nick, the readability of this ordinance. When people pull the ordinance, they're gonna pull the ordinance. They're not gonna be looking for resolution 18-20, what is
Yeah, I mean,
it?
I get it. This is, to me, this is kind of the more the intent that's going into it. We have a short statement of intent. I don't want to repeat all this in the ordinance.
Nope, and I don't either. Just-
And, I mean, we've spent a lot of time on this. I don't want this, if people are not ready to vote on this, I think that's fine. We can, I think it's pretty much put together. We can vote on it next month. We've really spent a lot of time in council meetings dragging this out. So I think I've done all the editing I want to do today, but I mean, if people are not ready to vote on it, I certainly understand.
I would,
A lot of changes.
sure. And I would say that I don't, just in terms of the work we're doing, adding a few words about fostering trust would be okay with us. But I think that also we would, it would be that would be up to the council. One of the other things that was of concern to us was on page 4, I believe, of the ordinance, where, and this is another edit I think that was accepted by Nick and sent out, was that we include race and ethnicity in that. And I wanted, Nate, specifically to you, I wanted to make sure, so under number, I guess, section 2 on page 4, where it's talking about the data you should collect. And so race and ethnicity, I know that there was a conversation when we spoke about this matching with the Iowa City Police, their data form, and it does match. But here's the thing, Kevin and I had lunch today with Chief Matherly, and Chief Matherly, we brought this up, and his question was, no, it's there. And he sent it to his data guy, and he's like, why isn't race on there? So we expect them to have a change, and so we wanted to make sure that race was included. So it's race/ethnicity. Oh, you do have that version up. Good,
So
good.
We had an old version, but now I'm on my computer.
Wonderful.
Yeah, the disclaimer with this is we are using Iowa City's technology. The previous version was based on what Iowa City already had. Betty is informing me that Iowa City is changing to race instead.
They thought they had it there, and they sent me the form that shows that they do actually in that drop down menu that they didn't send you, Nate. It does have its race. So and also, I mean, the logical part of it is, if this is talking about racial profiling, and generally when you have profiling, race is usually the largest factor. And so not to include race in this would be a miss. So, and then we also made changes. Did you make the change here about the recommending for the training?
So that.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing that well.
Section 6.
Page 4.
page?
The board shall research and recommend training options to the chief of police for his or
Perfect.
her consideration under section 6 below.
Perfect. And we wanted to make sure that we didn't just dump that all on the chief, and that the board should have just some opportunity to, because this will be their specialty, to look at that and make recommendations to the chief. The ordinance does say that the chief shall ensure the training, so we thought that that was appropriate.
The other change that you added, or you suggested earlier, was just the inclusion of, so it'd be 2B, let's see, I'm sorry, section 1, 2B, disparate treatment of a person, and I thought that might be something that we would discuss. We didn't talk about it on the phone, but it was in your written comments. I don't remember talking about it on the phone.
I think we mentioned it on the phone a little bit in terms of the definitions that we would provide, and disparate treatment. And again, that comports with the legislation, and it is. So when you're looking at the definitions in our legislation, disparate treatment is the terminology that is used to clarify that the issue is about if you're treating one group of people differently than another group of people. And so it really goes along with being with discrimination, et cetera. So it's just a really good clarification piece in there. And I get what you're saying, that there are some things in here that may sound redundant, but in terms of, we've been working on this for about 5 years here in the state of Iowa, and having conversations like this in several rooms with law enforcement, et cetera. And so just kind of understanding what works and what doesn't work is why we included it in there.
Another change was you'd requested a resident or non-resident member of the NAACP to be on the advisory board.
Yes, that was after a conversation. Well, let me back this up. That was a conversation that we had, that Sylvia and I had. She had reached out to me about the changes, and in your previous version, you had the president of the NAACP as part of the search committee, and it was my understanding that you probably wanted a representative of the NAACP on that. So and mean it local, so it can't. So for instance, the Iowa City NAACP covers Iowa City and surrounding areas. So I'm not talking about someone from Cedar Rapids or something like that. Someone that would be local. The reason that we do that, and we do this in our legislation, in terms of making sure you have representatives from various groups that this affects, and so that you are able to have that perspective. And so that's the purpose of that. We did have a discussion, Sylvia and I, just briefly saying, my suggestion is that it could be NAACP or another group or a reputable organization that advocates for people of color. She thought it would be simpler to say NAACP. I also will say that at the state level, we have what we call the Public Safety Advisory Board, and they have recommendations based on things very similar to that. So a representative from an organization that represents the formerly incarcerated, or quite frankly sexual offenders, et cetera, because those perspectives need to be shared in situations like that. And so this is germane to this type of ordinance.
I think those were
My only comment on that, I think it's a good change, but this to me reads like we now have 6 people on the board.
Is it 6 or is it 5?
I think it's supposed to be 5, but it
does read that way. My initial proposal was that one of the residents would have been that. So it's a numbers. You may need to switch up the numbers a little bit.
Yeah, I think A needs to go to 3, and then you've got these other 2 positions that are specified out. Okay.
Yes.
So we've got a draft that Betty's happy with?
I think this is good. I did just want to comment that you mentioned our bill that's at the legislature, or that we're working on with the legislature. your bill really is in line with that. The definitions are very similar. It has a little more texture to it just because it's covering statewide. And it's not really we don't have a citizens review board, but we have a board that assesses and compares the data and things like that. So it requires definition and training and all of those. And so your ordinance does hit our main things to define what racial profiling is, but also to define what it's not. And then to be able to collect the data and provide the training. So you do have the major components of really any good racial profiling law or ordinance. So
I'm ready to vote. I think.
Can we vote incorporating that change of
I think so.
composition of the
Steve,
Citizens
I think we can
Advisory
vote,
Board?
correct?
As long as you know what you're voting on, in terms of you saying, people saying, let's strike this or move that, I'm not.
I think the only recent strike would have been.
As long as you all know what you're
I
voting on, is the only
apologize.
thing I was going to say. Is that's.
Well, there have been several versions of this. Have you read over this?
I haven't seen the ones, the most recent ones.
Can we do that before we?
What? I'm sorry. What?
I've gotten several versions today of this, and I have not read over this, and I don't want to just rely on what everyone is saying. Has Steve read over this? I would like to do that.
Can we do a first reading? Because this is going to take 3 readings, and not anything is going to change at the next either.
Would you want to do a first reading?
Mm-hmm.
Is what she's asking.
Yeah.
Well, how do you vote when, like I said, how many versions have come through today? And whatever you went through, I mean, it's not that I think this isn't going to be good, but
I'm ready to vote if that's of any help. Virginia?
I'm ready to vote.
Nick, are you ready?
For the
Dottie, are
first
you ready?
reading, I'm
Yeah.
not going to vote to.
Right.
Dottie's ready. Okay, is there a motion?
I motion to adopt ordinance 235 as proposed by the most recent draft that's on screen at 8:14 p.m. today, or 8:34 p.m. today.
I'll second.
Okay, and second by Dottie. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Herbold,
Aye.
Maher,
Aye.
Moore,
abstain.
Miller,
Aye.
Casada,
Aye.
carried.
Okay, so now we go to resolution 1849.
Thank you for Kevin and Betty for all your work on this with us.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank-
This is really monumental for the state. So thank you. And
No, thank
this is
you.
the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for your help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have the resolution?
I do.
You're an AV guy now.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got it on the board.
I
Would you?
can't hear.
We're looking at a resolution for Nick Herbold, companion resolution 1849.
So it's on the board. The only change is the extra paragraph that we talked about earlier. I can go down to that again if you want.
Yeah, go down to that, please. Thank you.
It's the last whereas. With growing concern nationally, statewide, and locally about racial and other profiling and the documented disparate negative impact it has been shown to have for minorities, it is the intent of the council to ensure a safe community for everyone. So that was the only paragraph added since last month.
Okay.
Are we in discussion right now?
There's no.
Well,
first
I
and
want to
second.
go ahead and get a motion.
Motion adoption?
Yeah. I
Or,
second.
yeah.
Okay, motion by Virginia, second by Sylvia. Now discussion.
So, part of this is obviously the financial impact of it. We had talked about 3 expenditures. The $1,800 for the data collection software, that's pretty important, in relation to the the ordinance we just passed. Then we also have the $5,000 for the Barnum work that was discussed. And then we have the $3,000 for the sign on Melrose. The idea behind that being, you know, the concern is that people who don't know about us enforcing our ordinances are more likely to be out of the area, and you know, and so the locals kind of know that, you know, that we enforce our speeding laws, especially on Melrose. And we have, you know, I think we have good reasons for that. We've talked about safety in terms of pedestrians and bicyclists being you know, hit at various speeds, and how the slower speeds improve survival rates substantially. And so we're not in the business of trying to, you know, pull a lot of people over. It's just we're trying to keep people slow, and this is a way to slow people down without needing to pull as many people over potentially. I don't know what Chris Barneman said that he wouldn't actually have data to analyze until we've been collecting data for a year. So the $5,000 wouldn't necessarily be spent for a while, but that's part of it. I don't know if anyone has questions or comments.
From a financing perspective, I'm interested in items 1 and 2. 1 being the $1,800 for access to the database system that we need in order to collect this data from Iowa City. So thank you to our neighbor city, our sister city, who's helping us with this. I think we do have funding for that. The city has some reserve funding in its mutual fund savings account that we have, and I think we could cover it through there. I also became aware late today through the Nick's reporting that there's a surplus in the PD department of about approximately $3,000, and I think this would be a wise investment to take some of that surplus and use it to apply as much of these expenses, you know, draw down from the surplus, plus another surplus that the general fund just closed out with. So I think Steve Cool sent us a note at the end of last month saying we had about $5,600 in surplus as well. So between the PD surplus of 3 and 56 from the last budget, comparison that we did, there's approximately 8,000. So I think we should be able to tolerate 1 and 2. The third item, which is the sign, the new LED signs, raised some long-term concerns in my mind. And I'm going to walk you through my analysis. Number 1, we are about to make a significant amount of improvements on the western entranceway of University Heights because of what the athletic club renovation is going to take place. And I'd like to see how that shapes up before we go out and invest and place any type of solar or electrical type of a signage. And number 2, I was wondering what happened to the $6,000 investment that the city has made in that portable speed trailer that we have. And just driving out of University Heights in this last week, I realized that in the median, the city of Iowa City has a big apparatus that's also serving to make some notice to oncoming traffic. So what I would like to see is this council postpone the purchase of item 3 until we have 2 things resolved. Number 1, we have a bit more understanding of how that interchange is going to change with the university making all those changes. And number 2, I'd like to make more use and consistent use of our $6,000 investment so that we can do the same effect, which is track the speed motorists are approaching. And finally, I'd like to ask Dottie, and I know she's mentioned this before, to work with Josiah to clean up any signage that needs to go on the western front of University Heights. I think we have way too many small pieces of signs saying something, and it's just clutter. And we need one big sign that says 25 miles per hour, speed limit enforced strictly. That way people are on notice.
Yeah, there's too much altogether so that your eye doesn't focus. That can easily probably pretty inexpensively cleaned up.
I think the speed trailer is being put to pretty good use elsewhere in town. I'd like to see us go ahead with the sign on Melrose. I'm curious as to what this 3,000 surplus in the police budget is.
I can't hear you.
Sorry. I'm curious as to what the 3,000 in surplus in the police budget is for. Do we know?
Just general.
Okay.
It comes out of the general fund, which means if they don't spend it, it goes back to the pool of everybody else drawing down.
I'd rather
That didn't come
cover.
I don't know what.
Okay. I'd rather cover these expenses out of the general fund than take money from the police budget at this time.
Somebody in someone's report, UHPD or Nick or Nate, one of the two, someone's proposing and asking that it be reallocated as a bonus. So whoever talks about bonus in today's council packet, which got put together rather later in the day,
I certainly wouldn't want to be taking money away that's allocated for police wages away from our police and putting it into a sign.
I think you might have been talking about Virginia had raised the issue of, I don't know, I think that got on.
Yeah, so
because there's some
we can discuss this later. We're behind schedule in police wages for this year, and so I'd like to get us back up to schedule because it's not right for us to have money allocated in police wages that we're not paying to them.
No, that's withholding, but this is totally different. I read in one of the reports that there was a surplus, a small one.
Okay. I don't know what that
they
is.
wanted to use it as a bonus, and
No one up here knows what that is.
okay, well, I think we all need to go back and read, because I read it this afternoon as quickly as I could, because stuff was just popping up late in the day. So, I don't know. I want to say Nate.
Is this something that really exists?
Yeah.
I'm searching, I'm not finding it, so.
I just said year-end bonuses to officers. I think that.
Okay.
Okay, then Nate, can you please take a look at your report? Because somebody mentioned a 3,000, an approximate 3,000 value.
I don't remember seeing that.
That I thought made sense.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Anyway, I think we should move ahead with 1, 2, and 3 and approve this resolution
We don't
tonight and
have-
fund this out of the
yeah,
general fund.
If we move at 1, 2, and 3, we don't have money for 3, unless other departments at this council table decide not to overexpend. Right now, the general budget, and this was what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna skip to my financial report. We are already in total government expenditures. We're at, just on legal, well, not even legal, it's just total government right now is at 84.5, and that's only 6 months into a 12-year period. We're burning through that fund rather quickly. So my concern is we cannot be doling out 3,000 here, 1,000 there. It's all going to add up very quickly.
Okay.
We're burning through cash really quickly. I don't know if you looked at the report. I mean, the budget is
I
voted by
did.
everybody, and I just have to tell you, total government is at 131,000, and we allocated 155,000. That's about 84%, and 3,000 makes a difference.
Okay.
Well,
Nick, do you have a motion?
I motion
If I
that we
could-
amend to withdraw the third item, which is a speed limit, until further
And I
funding
would
is
sec-
available.
I would say it's an unnecessary expenditure.
So this is an amendment to the
resolution.
motion, or to the
Which one
resolution?
was it?
To Nick's resolution, the elimination of the 3,000 for.
So do we vote on the amendment first?
You need to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he says we need to vote.
No, that's fine. On the amendment?
On the.
Yes.
No, on the resolution.
No, on the,
No,
on
on
the
the
amendment.
You have
The
a mo-
amendment.
You have a motion, and from the motion resulted an amendment, a motion to amend.
So the amendment is made by you and Dottie, by Sylvia and Dottie.
The
correct?
motion was originally Virginia and Sylvia.
And then, so can you read the amendment to remove number 3,
To the elimination of the speed sign.
which is number 3, right? Okay, so that's what we're voting on now, is the amendment,
So could we have discussion on the amendment?
of course.
I mean, if I were looking at allocating the $5,000 now for evaluating the data versus getting that speed sign up, I would say my preference would be to get the speed sign up first, and then collect the data over the next year and then, approach Chris Barnum with,
But Nick, you have a sign. You can put a cardboard sign up there. You also have that very expensive mobile unit, and you can put that over there. So it's not as though we don't have, resources.
yeah, I was just giving, that would be my preference, to have the sign going first.
Because we can collect that data for a year without paying the 5,000, and then we pay him
We
to
don't know
analyze it. Is
As
that
a matter of fact,
correct?
We don't know that. What's the engagement call for?
That's what he said at the meeting last time,
Okay.
when he was here, right? He said he would need data coming in for a year before it'd be
Right, but
statistically significant for him to evaluate.
That's my
Most
understanding.
consultants will want some amount or all of their amount. It just depends.
I'm
Okay.
not expecting Professor Barnum to,
Ask for the full, but I also know that you're concerned about fully funding all the obligations, right? So I like that, because that's exactly putting teeth behind our words with anything that we're sending out as a council body. And I like that.
it's definitely my intent to have the data analyzed, obviously, because we're collecting it. But I'm just saying, if you, as the chair, are saying that we don't have money for all of it, that's where my
I am.
priorities would go. So my position would be I'd vote against the amendment and be ready to talk about a different amendment to take out the Barnum money now, if that's what, if we don't have the money for all of it right now.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
I would be amenable to the Barnum situation if we allocate a minimum half to Barnum now.
Well, if you're saying we have $5,000,
Actually,
we
you know
can do
what?
3,000 to the sign and 2,000 to Barnum now.
Here's what I recommend. Can we table this resolution until reading number 2, when we can reach out to Barnum and have a resolution
No.
that
We had to
matches?
vote on the ordinance.
That way
You
we
say no.
have
I say
something
no.
fixed
I'm ready to
and
vote on
funded.
But first, we have to vote on the amendment.
Okay, so we're
First you have
voting
to
on an
vote
amendment.
the amendment.
Vote on the amendment. Okay.
And the amendment is to remove number 3, or the, say it
Speed
again.
sign, elimination of the speed sign.
Elimination of the speed sign. Dottie, do you follow that?
I couldn't hear it, no.
Could you say it again?
Dottie, we're voting on the amendment to eliminate the speed sign, number 3.
We're voting on what?
We're voting on eliminating the speed sign.
Okay, I'm for that.
Okay, let's start the roll call.
Okay.
Well, she was
It's-
first.
This is the amendment.
Right,
Go.
okay. We got Maher, Moore,
No.
Miller,
No.
Casada,
Aye.
Herbold,
No.
not carried.
Okay, now we have consideration of the resolution. 1849.
So again, for the budget, if you're saying we have 5,000, but not, between those two items, not 8,000, I heard you, Sylvia, say that you'd be interested in maybe part of Chris Barnum money. Would you entertain buying the sign, getting the sign for approximately 3,000, and then having $2,000 ready for Barnum? He didn't mention needing, any down payment or anything like that in advance.
But having worked with consultants, there's always a down payment. So I'm flexible I need some amount allocated to the Barnum, because that's where the data collecting is. And I don't want to engage in a contract where we don't have the money to put some down payment on. Consultants generally require 10% of a fee up front, and monthly billable hours that are drawn against a retainer account of sorts. So just drawing from that experience, I want to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success, and that we are not passing costs to our tax residents, to our taxpayers, because we didn't think this one through. So if you're amenable to that, I'm willing to talk to Barnum immediately tomorrow and start negotiating a small goodwill commitment from the city that certainly doesn't blow our fiscal budget.
I'm not.
I think we
agreeing
can
to
let
start
Nick
negotiating
continue to talk to Barnum.
Yeah, I can check in with him, but I don't.
I'd
He
like
made
to
it clear
create-
that we don't. he doesn't need it, we need to start getting the data. That's why we need to
Well,
start,
we need an
pass
agreement
a
with him.
resolution.
Right, we need an
Okay.
agreement, and we need to start working on that, and that's gonna require training. Who's gonna train on the data collection and all that?
So what is your position that you, in my position, I want to get the sign now, is your position that you want to allocate $2,000 for Barnum now, or not?
Let's allocate to, that's as much as I can work with,
So I-
because we have a very small surplus opportunity. We don't have that much.
So I have a motion, I would move to amend, it'd be paragraph 4, that allocates $5,000 for benchmarks, to amend that to $2,000.
Second?
And is there something there for the 3,000? Am I missing that?
Yeah, that's already in there.
Okay.
Right. We didn't.
Okay, you didn't change
Yeah,
that.
this
So
round
the
we didn't
amendment
change it.
is the 2,000 for Barnum. And Virginia seconds it.
Betty?
Oh. Could you come up to the microphone? Thank you. Thank you, Betty. You're so loud in the microphone, it's good.
Okay. My question is, understanding that the resolution am I correct in assuming the resolution is about expenditure of funds right now? So will there be another time when the council considers the remaining $3,000?
Yes, it is definitely my intent to get the money together to pay Professor Barnum. I mean, obviously, I brought, I don't know if you're at the meeting where he spoke.
I missed that meeting, but I've heard him speak several times. And
So he spoke, and he, we talked to him about, how much data he needs. My memory of it was, he needs a year of data before he will have enough data to have statistical significance to analyze it. So in my opinion, we were ahead of the game by saying we need this money in this resolution, but it was tied to what we were doing, so it seemed to make sense to put it in there. But I'm hearing that our budget maybe doesn't have it right now, so, but I'm also hearing Sylvia say it'd be nice to have it kind of a down payment for one reason or another, so I'm fine with that.
just asking, number one, I do know that Professor Barnum often hires students to do this data collection work. And so, you guys have a university right here, so, but the other, I guess my question is, the way that this resolution might appear, I just want to make sure that, if necessary, would it be appropriate to craft the language where there's an understanding of the 2 and then the 3, as opposed to just the 2? Because it sounds like initially there's the 5, that's what you've talked to him about, is 5,000. And so somehow making sure that certainly the payout currently, or the current payout might be 2, but that there's something in the resolution that identifies that other $3,000 as a payout, or as a future. I don't know how you do it in your.
I was fine with the 5, but I'm hearing that we don't necessarily have the 5, so I'm up for whatever. I don't think, because of all that we've gone through to get to where we are, I don't think we're going to drop the ball and fail to find the extra $3,000 in a year. But we could send some sort of signal through the resolution potentially. Amendment could be rephrased to clarify that. I don't know if it's necessary or not. I don't know if someone has wording.
Or maybe even
$5,000, $2,000 to be paid.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yes.
Does that work for your
Yeah,
purposes?
so long as we are able to fund a part of
I'd
this.
withdraw my motion. And if
Thank you, Betty.
I'll withdraw my second.
And is that okay with the council to withdraw?
Yeah, absolutely, we're discussing.
You agree? Because I know he'll tell me to do that.
So I would move to amend paragraph 4 on page 2 of the resolution to clarify that. Lisa, how did you word that?
5,000 shall be allocated, 2,000 to be paid now, 3,000 later, something like that.
So after allocated be comma, with $2,000
Paid up front.
to be paid up front, comma. Understanding, and so that's the end of my amendment. Understanding that
that's good.
I don't know that we're actually going to be paying him that money for quite a while, but it would be available.
Okay, that's the motion, and there's a.
I'll
there's-
second.
Okay, and Lisa seconds. Okay, Dottie, we're getting ready to vote. Are you there?
I'm here. What are we voting on now?
An amendment to secure a portion of the funding for the technology with an understanding that the remainder will be allocated at a later time, which would pull us into the next fiscal budget.
So we aren't voting for the $3,000 on it.
Yes, we are. So the consensus, the majority with Lisa, Virginia, and Nick, they want the $3,000
To vote on
sign.
the amendment.
Oh, God.
We're voting on the amendment, though.
Yeah, you're just voting on
Yeah,
it.
but she's asking what the consequence of that amendment is.
I see.
Right.
And so what else are we voting for then?
The amendment and the resolution after that.
And what was that?
Well, it's a modified resolution, modified for funding for some of that technology.
Oh,
But remember, there's 3 purchases happening here. Access to Iowa City's database, technology with a consultant, and number 3, that LED light, which, by the way, now that we're doing a discussion, I want assurances, Nate, that we have exhausted bidding, that 3,000 LED signage is, because I know Hills has one, and I was almost tempted to call Hills and ask them about theirs. And I want to make sure that we're not just,
Nate sent out a list of quotes for us
There's
and
at
an
least 3 or
earlier
4 in
council
there.
meeting this month. And so the
one that
3,000
you-
is very much an approximation of what it may cost, but it was the lowest one was something like
It's the state bid,
100.
so that 3,000 stalker radar has the state bid price for.
Do you remember that,
So,
Sylvia?
I also
Remember
sent
looking at
the other.
those?
I sent the
remember
comparables,
looking at a lot
but
of information.
Okay.
That's what I want assurances now, because he owns the subject area and he's my expert, so I'm looking.
yeah. So they have the state bid on that. I sent I think at least 2 or 3 comparables just from other companies as options, but they were the lowest bid at.
Okay.
Okay,
what technology? Because that police technology is going to be rolled into the major city plan for the new. What technology are we talking about?
I think we're talking about the.
Iowa City patrol car
Yeah.
software.
Shouldn't we be
Can we vote, please?
so Dottie, Chris is going to read the amendment we're voting on.
Well, I have a question about the technology issue. Is that going to be part of what we're doing with the new website?
No, it's
No.
separate and independent.
Okay.
And it's law enforcement software, Dottie. It's not commercial or retail
Okay.
or residential.
Okay, Chris is reading the amendment.
So
You're
the
voting.
amendment is to amend paragraph 4, that it will be a total of $5,000 as the payment with $2,000 paid upfront.
Okay, roll call vote.
Moore,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Casada,
Aye.
Herbold,
Aye.
Maher,
Aye.
carried.
Okay, now we'll go to resolution 1849.
Great. Oh, I motion adoption of 18.
We already have that.
It's already. Yeah, it has.
Okay, motion by Sylvia. Is there a second?
No, we have
No, we
Virginia
don't
and
have a
Silva.
motion.
Oh,
We
you
did
already
it.
have it. That's right.
Yes.
This is an amendment. You already had it, and you had, who'd you say?
Virginia and Sylvia.
Oh, I've got it here. Virginia and Sylvia. Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Casada,
Aye.
Herbold,
Aye.
Maher,
I don't know what it was because I couldn't hear it.
Dottie, it's the resolution. the whole resolution as modified. And if you voted for the modification, so I think by extension, you might want to follow.
Yeah. Okay. Aye.
Where am I?
Me?
Herbal, thank you.
Aye.
Carried.
No, I didn't.
You didn't? More, sorry.
I.
Thank you. There are too many amendments
I
on
know
this.
there are. Okay, very good. So, we've got that done. And, so,
Thanks, guys.
What
uh,
is going on?
Betty was clapping.
We don't get the way? Come on.
But before we move on any further, I have Jim Glasgow here, and I'd like him, and thank you for being so patient and waiting through everyone else. But I wanted to get a hotel project update. Thank you, Jim, for coming.
I submitted, there's a couple pictures in there that I left that you can pass around. What we're doing right now at the hotel is the stormwater detention basin, and that's the picture of the underground basin. And it's very similar to what Josiah was talking about in the permeable paving. We're capturing all the stormwater on our site, plus a lot of the stormwater that's coming from the adjacent properties to the west, and we're diverting it off the railroad property and taking it down south of our property about 2 blocks, and there it empties into the Brookside Park stream. But now I hear Josiah has now taken some of the Olive Court property and dumping the water back on the tracks. So anyway, we got all of our waters off the tracks, and you're going to be putting a little bit from Olive Court back on. So I think that's good. We were really negotiating with the railroad to keep the water out of that stream that goes along the tracks. But so anyway, that project is about done. We're putting in a couple monitoring devices now that restrict the water flow, similar to what Josiah was talking about. And that will probably be done here in the next few days, and then we're going to be compacting soil back on top and finishing up the retaining wall that's there and getting ready to make the parking lot pad, which will be using some of the soil. The big dirt pile that you're seeing there will be put back on top of this detention basin that we just put in. So other than that, we're still working with the engineers on reconfiguring some of the structural elements of the hotel, and working with Peter Harmon on the design of the restaurant. And those are ongoing. We've got about 2 or 3 more weeks, I think, of structural designs based on some of the revisions that we've made. So by that time, I should have a lot of the site work completed. We're going to be moving up towards the front now, towards Melrose, and working on some of the stormwater detention up in that area. And hopefully we'll get that all completed, and then we're actually going to be putting in the new driveway, which will again be raising some of the soil up front about 6 feet, and getting rid of that depression that's up towards the front. So other than that, everything's going along real well with us. I hoped within the next few weeks that we'll have a fairly definitive schedule, and when we're actually going to start some of the foundation work. It is a little bit weather dependent. And saying that, I guess if I can move on to Triangle Park real quick, what Dottie was telling you, we're going to be pouring the sidewalk back, I think, this week. The weather looks like it's going to improve enough to where we can pour concrete again. Everything in Triangle Park is done underground. We've moved the water service over to a new location for the drinking fountain. We've removed all of the concrete that was there, and we've taken out the berm that was there. We've brought in black soil. I will not get to any, finished grading this year, but my plan is to put the sidewalk back and get that finished up, and then we'll kind of close it up for winter, and come spring we'll do the drinking fountain and in the meantime, we'll probably go over some of the design work and some of the, if there's any other changes that need to be made, we'll kind of go over that with everybody, make sure everybody's on board with what we're going to do. So, and I'll be working with Dottie on that over the winter. So.
Are there any questions for Jim? Thank you
No.
for working on that. I mean, I know
yeah.
the weather came on really fast.
Yeah, it was surprising. Yeah.
With Triangle Park, but.
But now I have some keys here for the
For that.
that Greg sent over, and are we waiting for that resolution too? Is that coming up yet tonight?
The resolution's coming up. You can hang on to them. You can, whatever
I'll
you're
wait for the
comfortable with.
resolution, then I can give them.
That'll
to
be
you.
fine.
So, any
I
questions?
bet
or-
we can get a hold of you and get those keys.
Well,
too.
I think it's better I give them to you tonight.
Yeah.
That way you'll have them.
Don't have to bother you.
So,
You don't want to take them.
Oh,
okay.
that's fine. I do whatever
think
Jim
we could-
wants.
I can take them if you want me to.
Yeah, you want to,
The clerk will take them,
Oh, all right.
and then we'll either give them back or.
If you trust me.
We'll see how
What are
things
those
go.
keys for?
The two houses.
Oh, I see.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much for staying. So,
Did we ever collect rent from the two houses? Oh, they're ever?
They've been
But
empty.
even before, I guess in January,
Well, if we didn't get any rent, we got it.
you've got it? Can we talk about how much you might have?
we got to keep moving on.
I'll touch base with you. All right.
So, if it's okay, let's go back to administration and mayor's report. Is that okay? We'll go back there. And then, I'm sorry I didn't have a written report, but one of the things I wanted to update, Kent Ralston had sent an email to the council, I think it was last week, December 4th, and saying that he revised the survey and that they put it on this link, and they included the changes that the council had made input for their input, and that he wondered, he didn't hear back, so he thinks there's no other necessary changes, and he'd like to have this survey running by the end of the week.
Can you let him know I'm going to respond to him? I do have some issues with some of the changes that were made.
Well, can you do it like tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow morning, yes. I've been.
Tomorrow morning, because he wants to
Yeah.
get this.
No, I understand. I mean,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll let him know that you're gonna respond in the morning. And, because the other thing is, once he gets the final okay and they make the changes, then they want to send out a letter or postcard indicating the survey is available. He thought that's what the council had wanted earlier. And he would help with that. They could help with that. And I talked to Chris, and I think the best list is from Steve's office of where the survey would go, and that I'd work with him.
I'm sorry, but what?
I mean, not the survey, but the.
Why can't we get it from the county, who has the most recent records of residents?
Well, didn't we just send out a mailing not too long ago?
For what? I can't remember.
Good question, and I can't either.
Football?
We sent out something.
Football?
Yeah.
Football.
You remember what it was?
Football.
Football. Yeah, maybe it was just football recently, but we do have a current list.
Yeah, but I want MPOJC to handle it because I don't think they're charging us
Well,
for that amount.
That's what I'm just gonna get the list from.
Okay, from
the-
Steve.
Yeah, from Steve's staff. And then I'll work with Kent on getting a postcard together, letting people know the survey,
Is
about the
available.
survey.
Right.
But you need to get a deadline for tomorrow, tomorrow morning to.
I already
comments.
submitted comments to him, just to be clear on the record. What I am submitting comments on is what the pending draft is. I have some issues with it.
Oh.
And they were not generated by my changes at all. Okay,
Okay.
so,
So, anyway, I just wanted to update
Sure.
the council on that. And also, in January, I will be looking and making appointments and recommendations to the city council for Board of Adjustments, zoning commission, tree board. And if anyone's interested in serving on any of those boards, please contact me and or council member, and they'll contact me. And that'll be for the January 8th meeting. Okay, I think that's everything.
So the only thing I had on my report concerned this resolution 1859, which authorizes the mayor and the clerk to sign purchase agreements with the contractor selected by the committee for purchase and renovation of the homes at 23 and 24 Olive Court. After the last council meeting, at the direction of the council, the committee met with the contractor, kind of went over the proposal, clarified a few things, maybe added a couple things, and 1859 has the purchase agreements and the covenants regarding development attached.
Okay, so resolution 1859 is before you.
So moved.
Motion by Virginia,
Second.
second by Nick. Discussion?
Yeah, I went straight to the exhibits to see what exactly it is that were the final improvements from this property. And I was really, really disappointed to see that we don't have any green energy involved, either in geothermal or solar panels, which is something that I think is a significant contributor to carbon output and minimizing our footprint with respect to being climate sensitive. So I was really disappointed to see that, what started off initially through a habitat deal to bring in required solar panels for both to make those homes energy efficient, plus solarized, wasn't carried through. So that's the only comment I need to make. I just thought it was a big miss on the part of our council.
Any other discussion? Dottie, we're voting on the resolution 1859, approving agreement for sale of 23 and 24 Olive Court. Dottie, are you still there?
Yeah, she's still here.
Is she? Okay, roll
Just
call
don't start
vote.
with her.
Casada,
Abstain.
Herbold,
Aye.
I'll come back to Dottie. Moore,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Maher, Dottie,
Dottie, are you ready to vote on the sales agreement on the 2 Olive houses? Right now, all of council is on a yay, abstain. We need to close out this round with your vote.
On what? What are we voting on?
On the conveyance of the 2 Olive Court properties.
To the city. To the new.
Yeah,
From the city.
yeah. To the
Okay.
new owners pursuant to the agreements that were, to the terms and conditions that were negotiated with the committee that worked on it. Now, I made the public comment that I'm disappointed that we didn't take the initiative to do, climate warming measures by making these homes solar or geothermal. Pick, but one or the other. So I said abstain.
So what is your vote, Dottie?
So are you waiting for mine?
Yes.
Okay, I abstain.
okay,
Okay.
carried.
Thank you.
I don't have anything further.
Okay, any questions for Steve? Okay, we'll go to Chris's report.
Okay, so I sent around my usual, the updated building permit spreadsheet, my written report here. One thing,
I can't, whoever's talking is mumbling. I can't hear what you're saying.
Dottie, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yeah.
Fabulous. So I sent around my updated building permit spreadsheet, my clerk report, and both Lori and I have noted that the audit has been moved by 1 day due to the special election for the Johnson County Board of Supervisors. The other item I have is consideration of dismissal of 2 parking tickets. If there are any other questions on my report, I'm happy to, since we're running late, talk to you after the meeting.
Okay, can we move the consideration of the parking tickets a little bit later?
Sure.
And we'll go on to the treasurer's report. And Lori circulated the warrants to everyone. Is there any objection to paying the bills? Hearing none,
No.
the bills will be paid by unanimous consent. Are there any questions for Lori? Okay, we'll now go through the chief report, and Nate circulated that. And you wanted to talk about Caltech.
I do. So if Chris wants to, let's go up there. That'll be easier. Just
Okay.
plug it in.
You want me to do that?
No, I got this. That'll be fine. I just need that plugged in there. Would be
You got it?
So Nate's going to talk about Caltech, Dottie.
Yeah, so we talked about last month, Ryan Serber from Caltech was here and kind of gave their version of what the plan might look like and what we can expect from them. I just got an updated PowerPoint, I think it's about 17 slides from him that was forwarded to council about actually 15 or 20 minutes after the meeting started. So you have that. It's their full explanation of what he was here and explained in person last time. With the new program, they created a whole new display to show what it is that you're getting. So we're going to start with the current issues that I'm trying to address on a department level. So with our mobile computers, all of those are at or over 6 years old. The company, being Panasonic, recommends replacement at 4, really no older than 5. Our office computers, same thing, we're at 6+. The issues we're having with those, the issues that we're having with those is that they're running very slow. We have difficulty staying connected to the jack to the dispatch center via the VPN, which limits our ability to see details on calls. I've responded to calls here recently, a medical call, for example, without giving specific details. I can tell you that all I knew before I got there was the address, because that's all that would display on the screen because it wouldn't load. So with the radio being busy and not being able to ask over the radio, I'm going there blind, not knowing what we're walking into, which is an officer safety issue and a resident safety issue. The programs the officers are telling me are crashing on a regular basis. I've also experienced that. That causes us to lose areas of reports or complete reports, and when we have to redo that, that's an officer's time to do that, and it's just a waste of the city's money because they're sitting there doing that when they could be out patrolling or, at the school or any other activity in the community. The body cameras are something else that we're going to address with Caltech. We currently have 2 that I can say as of today in the mail. After 8.5 weeks now, I finally have parts for those 2. I'm still waiting on that additional camera that needs to be fixed as they try to determine if it's actually under warranty or if they want to give us the option to buy another one. So the company they're based out of Arizona. We're one of their smaller clients, obviously, with the size of the city. So while I call on a weekly basis and I'm assured we're on their priority list, we're probably not really that much of a priority, which is concerning. This last one is very concerning to me from a liability standpoint and as the evidence for whether it's Steve's office or the county attorney's office prosecuting our cases. I had an officer who had to use rubber bands to hold that body camera together just so he would have one for the last 2 games of the season. It doesn't look professional, and obviously it's not the image that we want out there or the best practice for us to gather that data. We're going to continue on those current issues with the in-car video systems. In the worst cases that we've had with those, they're also getting up there in age. I had a case a week and a half ago, a traffic stop that ended up in an arrest that I have absolutely no video for, because while the red light was on and said it was recording, it did not transfer anything to the hard drive. I have numerous reports from other officers where I'll play their video and I get half the stop and it still shows that it's recording, but it just freezes in one place, which doesn't do us any good for prosecuting that case. So we can extend the warranty on these devices. They'll let us buy them after the fact because they weren't purchased at the time the cameras were purchased. But that's going to be an added cost per camera of, depending on the age of it, $800 to $1,200 per device this year, and that cost continues to climb. Obviously, the older it gets, they're charging more to insure it. And another big issue we're going to address is the video that we do have, and a lot of our electronic forms are all stored on one server. There is no backup for that. There's no cloud backup. If that server dies, we have a water leak, anything happens, we're going to lose everything.
And this is like literally a tower in that room.
It's somewhere, but yes,
I don't know where it is.
It is a tower. It is just a physical server.
Yeah.
That's several years old at that. So what Caltech is offering us from the fleet maintenance side, we would only be responsible for essentially oil changes. When we hit the 30,000 mile mark, we would be required to do the manufacturer recommended checks. They would check things like the spark plugs and routine maintenance like that, but we're not required to do anything beyond that. Obviously, if we have an officer run over a nail or something and get a flat tire, those instances we would still be responsible for that. But currently, we're responsible for 100% of our maintenance outside the warranty. The vehicles that we would have would be both fully under warranty through Caltech and through the manufacturer. With that comes the fleet maintenance side of it. All the cars will have the MG90s, the mobile routers in them. So the officers already know this, and I'm not afraid to tell them that has the capability that I can track absolutely every movement of their day, how hard they brake, how hard they accelerate, the oil life left in that car. If there's a misfire in a cylinder, it's going to send me an alert. So we can better maintain those cars even for the time that we do have them. And it's a liability issue for us if we had an officer, if we had the unfortunate incident that an officer would be involved in an accident on duty. If we had witnesses that said the officer, no, he went through the red light, didn't have lights and sirens on, that piece of equipment is essentially a black box similar to what you would have in an airplane. It tracks every component of that car. It'll tell how fast they were going, if they did brake, if the lights were on, if the siren was on, when those were activated prior to that GPS location. So Cleveland PD in Ohio actually uses the same software and have litigated that in court several times and has saved them a lot. We have the increased ability to retain the officers, but going with the 5 cars, offering the take-home, something that I can only tell you that I know of 2 other agencies our size or a little bit bigger that offer that around us right now. Off-duty officers, our policy allows for me to call back off-duty officers or on-call officers, but right now I'm calling them back and having them respond to their personal vehicle. I'd prefer they respond in a city vehicle with the ability to go directly to the scene rather than add 5, 7, 10 minutes for them to stop at the police department, pick whatever equipment up they need, and then go. They would be responding with everything they need already in their vehicle. And it offers us more visible presence in events like the home football games. Wherever we have cars parked at, it doesn't matter if an officer is actually there. If you walk by and see the squad car there, the presumption is that we're close by. We could be a block and a half away, but it's a deterrent nonetheless. The other side, so body-worn cameras, as I said, I'll blow through this pretty quick. In-car cameras, the office and in-car computers, that will be one and the same. It'll be one computer that docks in, all we will have in the office instead of having separate computers that you have to choose to either be in the car or in the office to do your work. If the officer wants to go park in a parking lot at the UI club and start a report while they're running radar or watching for traffic violations, they can do that. And if they then need to come back to the office to print something, it's as simple as pulling the computer out, docking it in the office, and they still have everything without losing any data whatsoever. Obviously, the squad car, the emergency equipment, and the outfit, and electronic storage with that local server. So we would still have that local server. However, we're also in this package is backed up in the cloud, and all of that again is supported by Caltech. And the big part for us, being a small agency, is the back half of that with the support, because if we have a body camera break, it's replaced. I can tell you, sheriff's office, I won't mention the county, but they had a canine get a hold of one of their laptops about 2 weeks after Keltec installed it, and he thought that the screen was a good chew toy. Keltec replaced that at no cost under warranty because that's part of the program. So even though it was technically their issue, that cost the agency nothing instead of a $5,000 laptop. Just a little bit about the department that I want to use. It's a little bit hard to see up there, the lights on, but from 2010, we had about 2,900 calls for service that we responded to. That obviously went up and down there for a little bit for a couple years. In 2014 through 16, that held pretty steady at about 4,400 calls, just over that per year. Last year, we saw a slight increase to just over 4,800. This year, based on where we're at right now, our projected number is 6,200 calls for service, which we will get to is a 109% increase since 2010 and a 28% increase this year versus last year.
When you mean call increases, what's changed? The population hasn't changed. So.
Population hasn't changed. I would say the community's, the officers' involvement in the community and the community's desire for a response of some type has obviously changed. I mean, the demographics haven't changed, but obviously the demographics possibly have changed, but there's also obviously a greater request from the citizens.
So are you counting those instances? I'm getting into a little bit of statistics with you.
Yep.
Because this is what I have to look at anyhow. Not all calls are equal. So are these calls the ones that are initial and follow through, or are you just tallying the calls that people make? Because I can tell you, I have called the PD maybe 3 times trying to urgently get a hold of somebody, but because they're not there, I just keep dialing. So if you're counting me as part of the group that spiked to 109, I want that distinction made in your stats.
Yeah, so this has absolutely, if you call the office here, you're calling the wrong number. You need to be calling the dispatch center.
That's what I do.
And if you call them, there's no way you're not getting an answer, because that's a 24/7 service throughout the entire Johnson County. Those 17.5 calls for service are everything, anything an officer does. That doesn't matter if they make a call for service for a parking violation, a medical call, a house fire, which I just responded to a couple nights ago. It could be any call for anything that takes an officer's time is considered a call for service and assigned a specific number. So 17.5 per day is what officers in U-Heights are handling this year, and an average of 6 of those have absolutely nothing to do with the traffic stop. So that's going to come out to about 2,300 calls for service this year, 22 to 2,300, depending on how the rest of this month goes. That is not us going out and looking for something. It is us responding to some requests from the community, which at 2,200 calls is almost as many as we had in 2010 for everything, traffic stops and community requests included. So what that means is we're responding to a call for service about every 82 minutes at 17.5 a day. Obviously, there's days that number's lower. There's days that number's higher, but that's the average. So far this year, we've made 70 arrests as of the end of November. 25 of those have been for OWIs, and a call every 82 minutes on the average, with an average 3 to 3.5 hour processing time on an OWI, the officer's not getting that paperwork done before somebody else is calling and requesting them do something in the community, whether that's, like I said, a parking violation or a medical, which then they have to go back to that paperwork. So they're staying busy. An average arrest, 90 minutes to 2 hours, and again, well within that 82 minutes on the average. So the numbers, what everybody really has been waiting and listening to me talk for. If we stay status quo, we're about $81,000 a year, or $324,000 over the next 4 years. That is, we keep 3 cars, we stay on the same replacement plan, and the only upgrades we make are the technology, like the server and the cameras that are needed. We don't add cars, we don't do the whole package with Keltec. We strictly do just the same cars we otherwise would, as we have for the last 18 to 20 years. Every 2 years we're replacing a car, and just the stuff that's outdated gets replaced. We do that same package with Keltec. We do 5 cars, and we still upgrade all the technology, because that is a package deal, and they're giving us credit on the back end. They get those cars back in 4 years, or we have the option to buy them at the end of the lease. It's $73,000 a year, or $292,000. Ryan and I will work on that number. I can tell you we started at about $93,000, what I would call the luxury package. We identified a middle package at $84,000, and the 73 is the bottom of what we can get, everything we need upgraded and where it should be. We're going with the bottom option.
Do you have values for what we're paying now? Because we're on a lease right now. And also.
For what exactly?
For the vehicles that we have, because that's my understanding.
So yes, the vehicle that we have now, we're paying $10,000. The budget's
Well, you know what?
$10,200.
I would love to see a bar. If you can build that into it, that would be great.
Okay, well, I don't have that. I can't build that into it right now, so I can tell you it's $10,200. We also added $5,000 worth of graphics, lights, and other equipment to that because when it was set up as an administrative vehicle. It's now set up to be used with a cage and full patrol capabilities. So
Sure.
that
I
that
just
cost would go up to just over 11,000.
Sure. So I guess the distinction I want to do is a comparison of those packages against what we're running up against now. So for example, status with technology upgrades only, I need to see that compared to what our bare bones lease is right now.
Well, if you do a bare bones lease, you're kicking the can farther down the
No,
road,
no,
which is the
and
issue we have
no,
now.
I'm not talking a lease with Caltech. I'm just talking continuing the lease that Jerry Zimmerman and Dottie Maher navigated along with Jim Lane. I want to see.
Every lease would be new. You understand that, right?
Right.
So if we buy another car in 2019, which is the next replacement period in about 6 months, if we buy a car then, that's a lease. If we buy a car again in 2 years after, as Ryan stood here and told you, and I think presented the Ford increase of $12,000 a year.
Missing information, and this is why you and I are meeting on Thursday.
Mhm.
And that's to go over some of this fine details. When are we, I don't know what the schedule of turnover for any of our fleet is, and I think that's important for
It's
the council to know.
been the same for the last Louise and I actually talked about this earlier. For the last 18 to 20 years, it's been a car has been replaced every 2 years, 18 months to 2 years, a car has been swapped.
Okay.
And that's been the practice for almost 2 decades. So the way I'm looking at this is it's a 4-year deal. It's going to be cheaper than if we do the technology upgrades and stay status quo. If at the end of that 4 years, the council that is here now says we don't like it, this is terrible, can't believe you ever wanted to do it, we can go back to status quo, we can get rid of the cars, we have the option to buy these for a far lower value, keep them for another 4 or 5 years, and go that route and just keep the technology we have, or we look at what options are available at that time in 4 years. But it's a very small sample size and ultimately saving the community about $32,000 over the next 4 years, just if we go.
While also drastically upgrading our equipment.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the part that is, I was really skeptical of this to start off with. I didn't want to make the jump from 3 cars to 5, but
I can tell
for
you
less money.
Ryan and I have put, outside of my normal work day, I think I've put about 60 hours into this since the last council meeting with him, and trying to get that number to be the 73 to be what we need and what works for us to get the technology, like you said, up to the level that I think it should be and I think the community deserves, while still getting that number as low as absolutely possible.
How many other companies are there besides Caltech who supply technology?
Technology in the state of Iowa.
No, not state of Iowa. In law enforcement, what's the technology package
There's
available from other?
thousands of other companies across the country. Caltech owns every major state bid in computers for Panasonic. They own the state bid for all the emergency lighting. They own the state bid for the lowest rate of labor on the install and all that equipment. The push bars, they own every state bid on every product that goes in there is already at state bid price through Caltech because they own them all, and they have for several years.
My question is a little bit more discreet. What other competitors are there besides Caltech? Because I want to make sure that we're getting.
So
we're not
locally,
so excited with Caltech that we're overlooking other competition.
So locally, you have Raycom. Outside of that, there's not another major competitor in the state of Iowa. You'd have to go to Minnesota, or I can't tell you. I can tell you a couple in Minnesota. I can't tell you what it would be in Illinois or Nebraska, but then you're going to add.
So you're saying most of the localities in Johnson County are either using Caltech or?
I can tell you all of them are. Caltech builds almost 400 cars a year, and actually a couple of state agencies are currently looking into switching from their own operation to having Caltech build their cars as well. because they own those state bids and nobody can do it cheaper.
So you spoke really fast. I just need to make sure. Iowa City, what are they using?
Iowa City currently uses Raycom.
Okay, Coralville?
I believe every other agency in Johnson County either uses Raycom, or if they buy the university at one time bought Chevys through Carl Chevrolet, but because of that's a specific if you want to buy Tahoes.
Cedar Rapids?
Couldn't tell you. Actually, I can tell you. Cedar Rapids just signed a multi-year deal with Caltech for both body cameras and installs. In fact, they hired.
Since they did the technology side of it.
Correct. They did all. So they actually hired Caltech. There's a representative as far as maintenance that's in Cedar Rapids every Friday, and that is his entire day because they believe in their product that much. I totally believe that you're committed to the product. I just want to make sure that it is an appropriate investment for the city. Well, what I'm committed to is those two numbers right there, and saving the citizens money and still upgrading our fleet while getting officers the technology they need to safely and in the best way possible respond to the needs of the community.
Now, talk to me about the ownership of the technology, because IP is one issue that I'm very sensitive to. I work in it, and I need to at all times make sure that we maintain control and access to the data. How does that work?
So the data is
portable. Talk to me about security. Talk to me about what type of. We're turning over a lot of PII into a third-party system. Right now, we control it in a room here.
So we still will. The only difference is we will still control a physical server here on site. The difference is that Caltech is going to now offer, as part of this whole package, a backup option that backs up all of that data outside of here in the cloud. So I can tell you that, again, I don't have it broken down in that package. I can tell you that through Panasonic, that was almost a $12,000 upgrade, and Caltech is doing it for a lot less than that. That's body-worn video as well as in-car video and 14 different types of forms. So that's a JPEG, as a picture, an Excel file. Anything we need to add into that, we scan in and add with the video in that case. So when I send it to Abby or to Steve or to the county attorney's office, that comes as one package. The videos for that incident as well as all the paperwork that the officer has.
Now, you gave us a 4-year time period here, Nate. What are we looking at price points after that?
That is a policy decision at that point. If you decide to keep if you decide to keep all 5 of those cars, you say, Caltech, we want to buy the 5 cars. We're just going to buy them outright. The number they're looking at right now, it's kind of based on the market value at that point, but it's going to be about $18,000 to $20,000 a car, with obviously fully outfitted. So you get what you have, you get to keep. If you don't, I can't tell you what the price of cars, and neither can they, or what the state bid prices are going to be in 4 years. So
now I don't see a combination
policy
for
decision.
Caltech technology only. Where is it?
It's factored into, because like I said, we're going to buy under this. If we stay status quo, we're buying 2 cars under this and doing just the technology upgrades without the additional 2 cars that are in the Caltech package. So that is 2 cars, technology, the maintenance at $6,000 a year, which is a fun number to throw in there, but I can't really tell you what it's going to be. I can tell you that we have 1 car right now that on and off has a misfire in one of the cylinders, and sometimes just goes to 0 RPMs and doesn't want to go anywhere. So I'm working on a solution to get that through at least until that's the next car to be replaced. So I'm going to either get that through until that time, or we're just going to ride it out, because that could be an engine replacement. That could be anything from a couple $100 to several thousand. So that's the benefit with Caltech. We don't worry about that. If it drops an engine, Dodge is replacing it. If the lights fall off or the stop working, Caltech replaces it. Computer stops, Caltech replaces it. We don't have the question mark of, I don't have to come back to you in 2 years and say, hey, that oldest car we got out there, yeah, it needs a new transmission. I don't have an extra $5,000 in my budget to do drivetrain and transmission. Can you find it for me somewhere? It's a worry-free maintenance contract on top of the fact that you're, like Virginia said, upgrading to the best we can possibly do.
Does council have any other questions?
So I don't know if you.
Send us this presentation sometime tonight during council meeting, right?
No, what I sent you was Ryan's presentation, which is the 17-page. It's what he explained last time in person that they didn't have finalized through their legal.
Can you send me a copy
so.
of this so I can look at it?
Yeah.
Because this
Yep.
is, it's very useful information. I like it.
Yep, I'll send it to you. So I don't know, Louise, how you want to, if you want council to address the first issue first, or if you want me to go on to my second item with the salary information that Virginia requested.
I want to address the first issue.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's, consideration of Caltech car and equipment program.
Correct.
Now, we already gave our resolution approval at the last meeting, right? Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
No, we didn't.
We went forward with something.
No.
We went forward with.
You basically held your
we
spot
went-
in line with Caltech last
We
week.
went forward with getting more information.
Right.
Till we got more information.
Mhm.
And so, does anyone want to make a motion?
I'd like to see if we can table this because this is new information.
It's not an option.
Yeah.
If you table it,
He
if you
said-
table it, that option's off the.
Yeah, he said, we got to stretch to this month.
Yeah, he's got.
More information.
Uh,
I remember that.
Yeah, 12 other departments waiting for that package. If we don't want to do it, they gladly will, and they are making the same budget decisions right now as we are. So this month is what it is. It either is or it isn't.
I'd make a motion to give, I guess, authorization to move forward. Assuming there's more details that need to be added to that.
Well, I want to ask more questions then if we're not done with that presentation.
Well, we'll just do a motion in a second.
I'll second
A
the
second?
motion.
Okay, second, and then we'll have more discussion.
All right, because one of the concerns that I have is we have, what is it, 4 cars?
We have 3,
3. And we're jumping up to 4,
5.
to 5. We're jumping up to 5, and I just don't see that as a beneficial benefit to our cops because I see pay raises much as being more.
Oh, we're going to get to that.
Yeah, but we can't have everything, Nate. You know, we may have.
I think I can show you that you can, but
You can try. But
Okay.
the point is, I'm concerned about perceptions.
Okay.
Number one, your budget is asking for almost a $4,000 request for, what is it, parking spaces? You want us to buy parking spaces?
so that was discussed as an option last year. Nick and I had discussed adding a parking space down below. That's a nice to have, not need to have. Obviously, if the cars are going to be take home, that's a budget proposal item we can talk about. We have one garage that we have to maintain based on the equipment that we have there, and that's the garage down on Woodside that we've had
And then my
for
other question is,
years.
how many cops do we have per shift? Talk to me about a shift. How many cops are monitoring the 15 streets University Heights has?
Well, again, I think so we have 5 officers that are full-time, 3 that are part-time. The average obviously is 1 per shift because to cover all day, every day, that's the average that we're at.
So what does all day, every day mean?
So as of right now, we have an officer that's on duty from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then an officer that is on duty from 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. So the only time there's not physically an officer here on some days is 3 to 6. There's other days that I have part-time officers that cover either all night or the earlier shift, and then the other officer stays later.
So there's not much of an overlap.
Yeah, there's generally about 3 to 4 hours is the general overlap.
So 2 vehicles at most would be on an overlap, and with the chief of police having his 3rd vehicle, we really only need 3.
Again, I would argue it's a both officer retention thing as well as, again, if you want to spend more money to have less, I don't understand. I guess I don't understand that philosophy.
So the Caltech guy explained that change at the last meeting.
You know,
I too was.
I don't remember. I asked him to put this in writing so
Okay.
that we can look at it. So in fairness to me and to anybody else who was relying
So-
on information, we're just seeing it.
To reiterate from last meeting and for the public who is here, they analyze how many hours we use our car. And they determine how many cars our department needs based on the hours that we use our car. It's not really acceptable to run a car 18, 20 hours a day. I mean, that's how you burn through cars at a
There's
really
3 cars,
unacceptable
3
rate.
cops. So I'm not buying the argument that we need to send them home with brand new cars all the time.
That is merely for our own convenience that we're not storing them. And
but
paying
you know
for
what?
storage.
And officer
Their
retention.
risk
Yeah,
that they're
right.
moving off, every time they're moving, I mean, how far, where are our officers located?
So I'm glad you asked that. The 10, so as Virginia and I had discussed before, it would be a 10-mile radius. I had said that at the last meeting, that I think a 10-mile radius is fair. That basically covers the south edge, if you know where Penn Street is in North Liberty at the 4, covers south of there to the west side of West Branch, south to the north side of Hills, and west as far as most of the town of Tiffin, not all of it, not the new development out west. So that within that 10-mile radius, there is a response time of, even if you're at the far perimeter of that, a response time of 15 minutes or less. So that's how that was developed, as both a low mileage option for the city to keep those vehicles closer, and a response time that if I need officers to come back for some reason, they're close. If they live outside of that, their vehicle would have to stay here.
Is council ready to vote?
No, I just want to see, why exactly do we have to rush into this? Because I've got to tell you that this council's really good at rushing expenses and getting rid of assets from the city. So I understand that we have, you know, we're running we're working with a police department that is using old equipment, but you know what? So have 5 other previous chiefs of police been working with that, and they haven't had an issue. And
Would you rather there be an issue?
The only issue that I think is super priority and urgent is the technology. That's about the one piece that is super important for us to understand and to get a good grasp of. And I think you introduced the topic at the last council meeting, packaged and entwined with this Caltech. Number 2, I am impressed with Caltech, who is doing a substantial amount of business in Iowa. So I'm assured that they're not a fly-by-night operation that's engaged this department trying to appease us with really nice price points. I agree, they're nice price points. I don't want us to get lost in that shuffle, so that's good to know. But I do have to tell you that it's concerning that now all of a sudden we're increasing, we want salary increases, we want new cars, we want new technology, all these wants. You know, the bottom line is the taxpayers are going to be paying for this. Your budget, as proposed, doesn't decrease from what you have operating this year. As a matter of fact, it's increasing by about 90,000. And also, you have also not included legal expenses in this budget. So this budget right here doesn't have
Legal expenses for what?
right. You're generally
We've never had legal expenses. That's the full budget from last year, this year.
20,000 is something that needs to be moved back in here, because 20,000 is what's being used to litigate for court cases, tickets that are going to court. So I'm very concerned that if we are making such a savings deal on this transaction, why doesn't your budget reflect that?
Well, the budget that you have there, you said a $90,000 increase is inaccurate, because the budget there reflects $90,000 for the Caltech program, and as I just told you, it's 73. So we're going to reduce that by 17,000, which automatically takes us down to 575,020. If you would like to also reduce and have no garages downstairs indoors, I'm fine with that. That drops it another 3,000. Now we're down to 572, and you know, we can obviously make negotiations elsewhere, but the 590 is obviously not accurate with the new numbers that were asked for from Caltech.
So as far as I'm concerned, I you know, if we want, there's a lot of wants, and I've got a lot of potholes in my side of town. We've got leaf collections that may exceed one more than what we're contemplating, because there's a lot of leaves that are, you haven't gone west of University Heights, apparently.
Yeah,
It's a lot,
twice.
they're all over the place. So my concern is that we're focusing on a lot of nice to haves, especially the vehicles, and the technology is really what we need to have.
So what I'm focused on is addressing the need. Obviously, that I mean, I feel like it's shown that the community is demanding more from this police department year after year, and 109% more since 2010. And we're building, in case anybody forgot, it's a 4-story hotel that's also, while it's going to be very nice, will inevitably increase calls for service, whether it's a parking violation that they want towed, or whether it's...
To my final comment, Nate, you are absolutely right. We are demanding more, but you know what? Our profile doesn't change. We're not dealing with the type of urban criminal activity that we're seeing in other surrounding.
And that's where you're wrong.
And number 2, the hotel. I don't want to see our PD turn into the bouncer for the hotel. The hotel has got to put up with its own security and its own methods to control, but nonetheless, we have to service them. And nonetheless, my expectation is that's going to happen in about, what, a year to 2 years?
I believe they said a completion date and fully open
Next year.
a year from now.
Right. So why are we rushing with nice to haves? I'm not saying we don't need them. I'm saying the timing is what's becoming an issue for me.
And
I'm supportive of the technology upgrades because I absolutely agree with you. If we are going to stand by and defend our citations and our enforcement, we need to have every available technology to protect you and protect the community and the people that we service, right? But I think we can still service people in an old jalopy. I think we can still service them in an older car.
Oh, my.
We don't need to have the fanciest car in order to accommodate.
We're buying the cheapest car.
Community police.
Dottie, did you have a comment? Did you want to vote on Caltech right now? Are you ready to vote, Dottie? Dottie, are you still there?
Yeah.
Are you ready to vote? Are you ready to vote on the Caltech contract? Can you hear me, Dottie?
Yes.
Are you ready to vote?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Virginia, are you ready to vote?
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready
Yes,
to
ma'am.
vote? Are you ready to vote, Nick? Are you ready to vote?
I'm ready.
Okay, very good. So we have a motion and a second on the table
Yes.
for Caltech contract. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Abstain?
Abstain. And I'm abstaining on the record because most of this information arrived late into the meeting, especially the statistical information. And I have a meeting scheduled with the chief on Thursday.
Okay. So we have 4 yes and 1 abstain. So it passes. So you wanted to now present,
Yeah, Virginia had asked me to put together some salary information, both for the remainder of this budget as well as going forward into the new budget. So start off with a little historical information. Again, in 2016, the highest paid UHPD officer was at $23.30 an hour. They based that at that time on 80 hours every 2 weeks, roughly $48,500 a year. Today, your highest paid UHPD officer makes $20 an hour and $42,000 a year, about a 14% decrease in wages.
Who was the highest paid person in 2016?
That'd been Officer Sherman.
Okay, so it wasn't the police chief.
No, I said officer, not chief. Arnold's Park, Iowa. These are some comparisons around the state. Arnold's Park is about the closest comparison to the city of University Heights in the state of Iowa. They have an amusement park there by Lake Okoboji. About 1,100 people, similar population. Those are their lowest starting pay is 48. Their highest pay is 58, and the chief is about at 75. Just spoke to him yesterday. Coon Rapids, Iowa, 1,200 people, roughly 48,000. Lake Mills, Iowa, 50,000 at 2,000 population. And then we'll get into 3 places here that are closer: West Branch, Williamsburg, and Tipton. And as you can see, all in that same neighborhood. So my big thing to point out here is these. I will never be able to stand up here and tell you that if an officer wants to go to Iowa City or a large agency for what it offers, we can never compete with that. I can't give them a detective job. I can't give them some of those specialties if that's what they really want to do. But if they want to be a small town officer, that is what you're competing with. Because if I can live here, I can live 30 minutes either direction and make more money and have a lower cost of living, I don't have any argument for that officer to stay here. So the current wages for the 4 of us that are here are as follows. To be within budget, but as was requested, to spend 100% or as close there possible.
Can I just give some background on that? So Nate alerted to me to the fact that we are behind our allocated budgeted amount for the year in police salaries.
How did that happen? How are we behind? How does
The raises I
recommend
recommend
to implement?
So we gave it.
That's
If you
been passed by a prior council.
no, it was this council. It was in January this year. When we talked about budget, the salaries that Nick and I had proposed were not adopted at that time. The council didn't feel like it was a good time. I think everyone got $1 an hour raise, but that still left an allocated budget that was
So
far exceeding.
this doesn't change our budget at all. I just want to make sure that we are pushing that money out to the officers, not sitting on it, especially when we just lost a good officer for this reason.
So the four of us that are here now, if we go at those wages, I would like to see that number that Daryl Tucker is at right now be our max top out pay. That's at $58,000 a year, in line with both Williamsburg and Arnold's Park, Iowa, and also in line with the Tipton and West Branch. So that would be the top out. It would take 6 years from the time an officer gets hired till the time they get to that amount. Where Officer Gear is at, he would be at the bottom.
Nate, I'm going to ask you to make a couple of changes to your officer salary information and then send the slides to me. Next, can you add another column telling us total salary? That way we have a better understanding between.
Do you want just the 6 months or what that is for a year? Because this is
No, per
only
year, per
okay.
year. I
Well,
think everybody looks at a position based on yearly
correct.
salary.
Just for this is only for January 5th, which is the beginning of a pay period. This would take us January 5th until June 30th this
That's right.
budget year. So
But still, I want to know, had we honored that process, what does it look like?
okay, so you want that number compared to that number? This column with
No.
had we
I
honored
just,
it.
Just put down, it brings them on par or par salary with annual salary base, or what does that translate to? If we're going to be picking up 6 months and then going forward, I'm presuming we're going to keep that same schedule. Obviously, it's going to increase the next year's salary at an annual rate, which is fine, because I'm a strong supporter for paying, livable wages. So one of the things I want are livable wages and competitive wages to our community. So I just need to know what that translates to for annual earnings. What is 32,000? Is it $32 translates to, I don't know, 50,000? I have no idea what that would. I'm asking you to do the math.
Yep. So 32 is right at 70,000. 2656 is 58. 22 is roughly 50,000 or 48,048, and 21 is about 45,000.
Okay, and that's exactly what I need. That's what I'm looking
Okay.
at as well. I'm not just looking at short, discrete pieces of information. I'm looking big.
Yep, I'll send you that with
Okay.
the slides. So I guess jumping back to that for a second. So that would push us out to, and really the only reason that we can't go with what I'm proposing for FY20, the only reason we can't go to that right now is because of all the part-time hours that we've spent in the first 6 months and overtime to cover shifts.
Now, let me ask you another question. I know that the chief has received preferential pay raises. Why are you getting a significant jump ahead of all of the subordinates? Because I thought that was an issue that was discussed by this council, that we wanted to level off our subordinates as well. And that
So
would be your Guiers, your Kites, and your Tuckers.
Correct. And I can tell you at my current wage, I make what Trent makes an hour. I have already done 25, almost 2,600 hours of on-call this year, and an equal number of actual hours in the office. So about 5,000 hours this year that I have worked for the city, which if you divide that out by my salary, I make as much or less than what Trent does. So even if you cut my hours back by 500, I still come nowhere close to even where Daryl is at. So I don't see the opportunity for me to, even like I said, cutting back significantly by 500 hours, which would, I think most people agree is significant. I would still be well in line with what they are making on the hourly, because they're also eligible for overtime, and I am not. If I was eligible for overtime, the city would be paying me about $105,000 this year. So to get to the new numbers, time off, I don't know when or which chief it was that changed the time off, but the average officer in U Heights right now has 178 hours of vacation time, with the longest serving officer being here coming up on 2.5, 3 years. That to me is absolutely insane.
Can you repeat that again a little bit more slowly?
Yep, the average officer has 178 hours between all four of us that are here. 178 hours is the average annual leave or vacation. We call it annual leave vacation time.
Because it's been piling up and not being taken?
No, that's what's given every year. So a beginning officer has 170, and that jumps to a 210 or 220 in only 4 years, which is, as I said there, it's simply unsustainable.
I think the reason why we did this was to compensate for the fact that we don't pay. And this is not an unusual employee benefit strategy that many
Except for we
employers
don't have
use.
anybody working. I cannot, if I pay on-call hours alone, the city cannot sustain that and actually have coverage. You will have to increase the budget if the
So
time off
how
doesn't
did
change.
some of our prior chiefs sustain smaller staffs
Like-
with less pay? And some of them were here for a long period of time. Explain to me that.
So you had lower staffing levels, and I believe as I showed
Like
in.
maybe 3 or 4. They never
Yep.
hovered
So
around 5.
if you look at 2015, FY 2015 that I had sent out before as the closest comparison, salaries are pretty well on par with what they are now. And again, officers were working far less hours. So you had more on-call. You had more officers taking on-call. So the city's only paying 25% of that hourly rate. I see it as if I was a resident here, I would prefer to have someone actually in a car working, not on call. So I try to do that with the schedule as much as possible. If the city's direction is we don't care, we'd rather have on call and pay 25% of the hourly rate, that's definitely a cost savings. There's no doubt about that. So new time off levels based on other agencies in this area as well as agencies our size. 1 to 4 years of service, we work 12-hour shifts, so that's 2 weeks. Out of 2 weeks, they work 7 shifts. So out of 2 weeks, that's 1 to 4 years, 8 shifts would be 2 weeks in a day. 144 hours, you're talking, again, we're going to go up by 4 days. So a week being, or 2 weeks, 4 weeks being 14 days, you're about 3.5, so on and so forth, up to, and yes, if we get officers that are here for 15 plus, I will find a way to make 12-hour shifts work because that's deserved, in my opinion. I have no problem with that. So that new time off structure will save the city 362 hours or roughly 30 12-hour shifts that we will actually have an officer working rather than on call paying overtime or paying a separate salary to a part-time officer. So that being said, 2019 wages, if we do that increase, that's the increase from the previous slide that I proposed as requested, use our full budget. And then starting July 1 of 2019, the next slide will show the total salary per officer or per employee and the total budget for the department. So those are the hourly rates, but if we're going to think in terms of the long term, with my budget, that's 311. So that's 311,000. Currently, we're at 303. That 5th spot that we're going to hire back for, I have 4 people who are already Academy certified, which requires, I don't need Academy money. So the money that we're going to allocate to sending someone to the Academy next year, that money is just reallocated in the budget to allow that 5th person to make the transition from their current department.
Why do we need a 5th body?
Well, the easiest answer I have for you there is it takes.
Just give me a complicated one.
Well, without getting into the exact math and having a whiteboard here to draw it up there, the full-time equivalent FTE in employment for us to cover 24/7, 365, which is just a warm body. We're not even going to include vacation or time off or comp time or sick time. It takes
But
5.
you're not covering 24/7. You just said you're covering.
But we are.
1/7.
Somebody's still working.
Somebody's on call.
Somebody's still being paid to be here.
There's gaps in that.
I can make it 24 hours. That's not an issue, but again, it's going to cost the city more money. And regardless, we are covering 24/7. Somebody physically responds if you call.
But they're not monitoring our roads at that time. They're just
Correct, but-
physically available by some telephone line. That's it.
Correct. They are still working though. They are still on duty. So
At home.
correct, they're still on duty. So that's still 5 people to cover 24/7. So at the 311 and those previous hourly amounts, that's what it breaks out to. The 27,500 at the end would be for overtime, on call, and part-time officers. This year, I think we're going to run around 9,000 or 10,000 for part-time. So that leaves about 17,500, 18,000 for overtime for football, as well as any vacation coverage or anything else. Right now, I think the average officer is doing about 3,500 to 4,500 a year in overtime.
So for 2019, that first figure, you have money in the budget now
Correct.
for that?
because these raises are even above that, and the only difference in the allocation is taking the 8,000 we would have paid to the academy and hiring someone who's certified, who already has that training that we don't have to pay for, the academy and their salary for those 3 or 4 months.
And that
We
could
get
start
them.
the pay period January 5th.
That would start pay period January 5th on the lower numbers, and then the next increase being July 1, and then rotating on the fiscal year in July. Obviously, if there comes a year where the city doesn't have the funds, those wage freezes are an option and they stay the same.
And Nick, have you reviewed this too with the chief and recommend that?
And what's the pay increases between the present salary and what we're jumping to, just so I can have a sense of percentages?
I can't give you a percentage. I can tell you Officer Kite right now, he would, again, we'll do it with the July numbers since they're up there for the yearly value. At 52,000, he's currently making the 42,500, 43,000 that I showed you on way back in the other slides. So it's about a $9,000.
This doesn't reflect other employee benefit costs like healthcare or any of that.
Correct. That's reflected elsewhere in the budget.
And IPERS and all those other. So what's the average cost for that? When you look
For
at
which one?
One body of one police officer, how much is that? So for example, the school district tells us that each teacher is about $100,000 by the time employee benefits are paid along with salary. So what would you say would be the equivalent for PD?
We use the mid-level with Officer Kite at the current insurance rates that with the increase and with our current budget, it's roughly $5,200 a year for that insurance for the officer. So you're looking at, 58,000 with the insurance.
Another
And
100. So each.
Can you
each
guys
officer's
do this
500.
on Thursday? Can we get a motion and wrap this up?
I can't get a motion if I can't get information now, Virginia.
I
Sorry.
think the rest of us
This is important
have
enough that
already
it needs
gone
to-
over this with Nate to the
That's-
extent that we need
and
to.
You know what? I didn't get the opportunity to do any of that.
Nate,
so-
I'm sorry, Nick, do you have a motion here?
I move to accept the salary recommendations presented by the chief.
I'll second that.
And these would start January 5th.
correct. The first set January 5th, and then the others coinciding with the FY20 budget.
Yeah, and of course, we can always use a freeze if we can't afford it for the next budget.
Correct. FY21, that would be
Right.
council discretion at that point.
How long had this salary structure not been in place before it was proposed? Because I know Chris Lyons had also mentioned it, but we never got around to it in the old council, and I know you're picking up on it. So how long had it been since the salary scale? had
Again,
looked
the
at?
rest of us did our homework before the meeting and talked to Nate.
Whoa, Virginia, calm down. Nate has this information. So
It is 10 p.m. Can we
I'm
please
following.
move to the next
I'm
item?
being a responsible counselor, and I'm getting information before I vote. Nate?
So 2016 was the last time that it was at the lower level. In 2017, it was raised, and then again in 2018, it stayed the same, and now going into
So about 2
calendar
years.
year
Right.
2019.
Okay.
Dottie, are you listening to this, that we're going to vote on the salary increase starting January 5th that's already in the budget? Dottie, are you there?
I'm here.
Thank you. Are you ready to vote?
Sure. Are we voting on insurance?
No. We're voting on salary
A
increase.
salary scale increase for which we already have funding in the budget for the next 6 months. So that we're assured of.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Betty.
Okay, my concern is that I'm sure that they are covered for insurance, so,
Yeah, they are.
okay.
Okay, so there's a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, with reservation that I need to have all of this information, please, afterwards.
Yep, I'll send that all to you.
Lisa, will you the second? Yes.
Lisa was the second. And Dottie, you voted aye. And so we have 4 ayes and you with reservation.
Right.
With getting more
I'm an aye with
information.
reservation, and it's pending this information, receipt of this information. I would have appreciated receiving this ahead of time And that's something that I might as well talk about, how everybody turned in their information really late, 10, 11, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 2 p.m. this afternoon, all sorts of discombobulated and important information was being sent.
Yeah, we
at
should
odd
really
hours
have
at a
more
time.
firm deadlines on
Yeah.
submission.
Yeah, I think so.
Great.
Okay, so now we'll go on to, I think we're at approval of dental and health insurance for University Heights employees for 2019.
Chris, you can switch back to your computer if you want.
And Chris was going to talk about that. Oh, no.
I
you
was just
were
going
gonna
to
talk
switch back
about
to
it.
your computer.
I know Chris alerted us about it.
Nate, I am going to ask you to send me an email after tonight telling me how much in the budget is for that alone. Okay, so I need to know that. I'm not going to wait for Thursday.
I just
Thanks.
fixed my computer. Nate, could you just start in while I'm trying to get my computer back?
Yeah, I think as we talked about last month, the budgeted item with the insurance, what Steve Cool had before, absorbs the increase. If we want to forecast, like typically what he usually does, another increase, I put it at the overall budget item at 30,000. That's 8% over what it needs to be, but that's council's decision if they want to have that buffer or if you just want to approve the number that Chris has. That's the exact.
It's the same as what was voted upon last year. As I'm
Okay.
trying to get my computer to come
Yep.
up.
Now, I do want to add for the record that I did reach out to IPERS, and I reached out to other independent CPAs that are handling employee benefits for smaller employers, and healthcare is just one of those super sticky conundrums right now, and we're a small group, and we're always going to pay through the roof on that. So I'm comfortable that, IPERS couldn't have done much better of a deal for us, so it's unfortunate that we have to sticker shock our residents with a 30% pass-through on on this increase.
But again, the budget item from this year, FY19 to FY20, does not have to increase. It's a council decision if they want to increase it by the 8% that I proposed to 30. You can take 8% off of that number and stay the same as what you have this year. That's
So let's do
motion to
It's your
status
choice.
quo. Yeah.
Wait, is there a motion?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Well,
Is there a motion?
We
What
need a
what is
motion.
this
I mean, we're
for?
just,
We've
someone had
done-
brought up changing it, and I'm
Okay.
not going to change benefits, is what I'm hearing.
We've done,
But there is a percentage change, and Nate is just telling us that we can either do 8% or 33%.
Correct. So the budget that I sent out has an 8% increase from FY19 to FY20, predicting that if insurance rates go up again next year, because they go on the calendar year, obviously not the budget year.
Right.
So if they go up on January 1 of 2020 during this budget year, if you don't forecast the increase, or any increase, then you're hoping they stay exactly as they are right now. So I put the 8% increase in there just as just a CYA,
Thank you.
but it's not required.
And this is a renovation, this is a renewal rate, so it's an amendment to whatever it's an endorsement to whatever our insurance policy is for healthcare. So I didn't view it as a status quo issue, it needs council action. We need to be aware of it. So what's the change here? Walk me through, what am I being asked to consider?
I'm sorry, is there going to be a motion on this, or can you guys, again, discuss this on Thursday?
This is not about me, this is council, that's why I'm asking Nate.
Okay.
What are you
I
asking us
I
to
don't
do?
see a reason to spend, if there's not action to be taken tonight, I don't see a reason to spend time talking
That's-
about
I
it.
need to give
I
a
think Chris
decision
needs-
tomorrow.
Okay. So we do need
We either
a
are
motion.
going to have insurance for officers or we aren't. Nate has the money in his budget already to cover this increase.
So I would move to
Adopt?
keep the same benefit level, recognizing that is going to increase premiums. And so pause for a second. I guess the second question is, are we worried about forecasting next year now or not?
I think we're locking ourselves into a situation where you can't change it, so we're gonna have.
Well, I guess
work
to
those
answer that, Steve Cool would always adjust that. So let's say, for whatever reason, the number ends up staying the same and you do forecast it, when that comes down time to the end of the year, that money can be, if you forecasted 2,000 over and you need 2,000 extra in street repairs, that money is reallocated throughout the city, unless
That's
Lori can,
surplus, right.
yeah.
And
So
we have
I
had
just
an
don't think we
increase in our rental permits significantly, so that is contributing to the general fund.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yes, we've had an increase in our rental permits significantly, and that is adding to the general fund, so I think that could offset any potential increases.
Well, let's talk about that, you and I, after that, because we need to be able to track what we're projecting.
So,
I haven't seen any financial spreadsheets from anybody. If those have been sent, I'd love to see them.
so I'm sorry, Nate, what forecast are you requesting?
So when I did it, I put the forecast in there at 8%. Obviously, this year we would have never guessed it was going to be 33. So
Right. Nobody did.
8% is complete shot in the dark.
And if we go to the Affordable Care Act, we cannot revert back.
Yeah.
So, again, there is uncertainty with the federal government, there's uncertainty with the state government. I would, as a citizen, not as clerk, I would want to make sure that the officers are covered with the best insurance. Wellmark is a known provider. They have many doctors, nurses, whatever you want to call it, clinics that are part of the program. Again, it's a council decision.
Can I motion to proceed with renewal?
We have a first already.
Okay, sorry.
So just, I
Second.
guess.
He
the-
was in the middle of
Yeah,
it.
to continue and
Yeah.
forecast an 8% increase for the next calendar year.
Right.
For calendar year, so we're talking about calendar year 2020.
Correct. January 1, 2020.
So
Okay,
we're
that's
just
the
yeah.
motion. And is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lisa. Okay. Is council ready to vote?
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Dottie, they're voting on dental and health insurance for the employees. Are you in favor? Dottie, are you there?
Dottie, we're voting for renewing the premiums to the dental and healthcare for the PD. There's a question of fiscal overlap, but not much that we can do anyway, so I'd say I'm voting in favor of it. Virginia, Lisa, and Nick did as well. Where do you stand?
I vote for it.
Okay.
I
Okay, motion carries. Now, do we want to discuss the tailgating season?
Now, I'm fine
Okay.
moving. The only other thing I'd say about my report is we penciled in a January 22nd date for the Pizza with Police event. That's penciled in, though. We still want to firm that up with Jerry. We're talking about it being in this location in City Hall, and just have to work through some logistics on that. That's all.
January.
January 22nd.
Did I miss anything, Nate?
I don't think so, unless anybody
Okay, we
happens
got
to have more
all
questions.
of them here because I've been back and forth. Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to building, zoning, and sanitation, and Virginia sent an updated committee report. And you wanted to talk first with your consideration of Resolution 1860.
Yeah, motion adoption number 1860.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Don't have any.
I do. I have, I've reached out to a couple of, I reached out to the professor, I reached out to MPOJC, and after reviewing the comprehensive plan links that were sent to me from you and also Lisa, I got some reservations about the scope of what we're doing. I think we really need to have a much more thorough, not just watershed or water rain or runoff evaluation.
Do you have an alternative of who could provide that for you?
Well, I was hoping, well, that's exactly it. Do you know of anybody else?
No,
Because
this
that
is
should
our
be-
only option, especially at the price tag.
Well, not just the price tag, but also the obligations that come with it. I'm really concerned that this is going to be turned over.
That's
to
fine. Let's just vote.
students- To students who are going to tell us what we have to do instead of what we could do. And so unless you're willing to work on a situation where we have a higher amount of discretion in this reporting, I'm hesitant to vote in favor of it tonight. So if you want more time to go figure out with
There's no
staff.
more time. Go ahead and vote no. That's fine.
Okay.
Is council ready to vote?
Well, I don't think there's a need to vote, just, where does
Well,
everybody
there's a-
stand at this point?
There's
I
a
mean-
motion.
There's a,
Sylvia, if this is a topic you're interested in, this is your option.
I don't like the option.
there's
Yeah, I
a
think we can do better.
motion and second for the
I-
resolution.
I would love for
Dottie?
you to do better.
The council's going to vote now for the resolution 1860 under building, zoning, and sanitation. Do you see that in front of you? The University of Iowa Graduate School of Urban and Regional Planning to complete a climate action plan for the city of University Heights. Did you see that? Dottie, are you there?
I think there's, Dottie, we're about to vote on a climate
I'm
action.
here, but I'm here, but I can't hear you.
Okay, she can't hear Louise. Why don't I pass, okay,
I'm just
Louder,
gonna
I
tell
think.
you that we're gonna pass you over.
Hi, Dottie. We're now under building, zoning, and sanitation. We're under building, zoning, and sanitation on the second page of the agenda. Consideration of Resolution 1860 authorizing the University of Iowa Grad School of the Urban Regional Planning to compile a climate action plan for the city of University Heights. Did you see that?
I vote negative, no.
Okay, we started with your roll call vote. Your roll call vote for Dottie Maher is no.
I got
Chris?
that, I got that. So are we voting now?
Yes.
Moore,
No.
Miller,
Yes.
Casada,
Abstain with reservation on account that I think we need to work with another organization that can provide us a larger scope of services. I'm happy to make our data, our city available if they still want to study us. I don't think they need to get our permission. If they still want to compile that report, they're welcome to do so. But at this time, I have strong reservations that we're not being thorough enough for what University Heights needs, and that means that we are a very small town that needs to look beyond just water runoff. We've got composting, we've got
Nothing's gonna happen
solarization.
if it's not this.
No.
If it's not
really
this,
doubt
it's
anything's
nothing.
gonna happen,
I
so
mean,
you're voting.
so
I'm not gonna give lip service to a super important issue,
Well,
that's
we're
why
in
I'm
the middle of
abstaining
the vote.
tonight.
so
Okay.
So-
Herbal,
Sorry.
Aye.
thank you. So I have 2 noes, 1 yes, 1 abstain, not carried.
Thank you. Is there interest in this council in setting up a special meeting to talk about next steps for Swisher in early January? We have a regular council meeting on January 8th. So probably after that, 9th, 10th, 11th is that week. The next week has the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th.
I have reached out to other organizations to see if we can get their consultation services for green space and parkland planning. That's consistent.
I can't hear.
That's consistent with the mandate of our taxpayer approved. Virginia would like to request that we have Swisher planning in the for January. And I'm informing this council that I've reached out and I have ongoing conversations with different groups to see what level of support they can provide the city to do green space and parkland planning that's more comprehensive than what we have been contemplating. And this would be something very similar to the Vision program that was performed in 2016. So you had, an awesome amount of feedback from well-informed resources that were neutral. They visited with the community to figure out what we could do, what we could tolerate, and more importantly, they provided us with the
I'm sorry.
plan that we later
Can we talk about-
submitted to apply for a $750,000 improvement program with the DOT.
Sylvia, I'm
Lisa,
not
what dates
tracking
work
what
for
you're
you?
talking about.
I'm talking about, this is why, I'm letting you know. I'm-
Bring it
Virginia
to
wants
the
to have a
special
special
meeting.
meeting in
And I
January
just gave you an FYI update on what
on
I'm
the
doing.
That's
Swisher
great. So
track.
we can talk about those things at a special meeting. We need to pick a date. Louise, do you have your calendar in front
What
of
is
you?
Dottie
No.
saying? Is she saying,
She's asking if we're still talking about that resolution, and the answer is no.
oh, no, Dottie, we've moved on to the Swisher
So
track.
what are we talking about? Just everybody's yipping.
I know, it was kind of like that, Dottie, sorry about that.
So what time is it?
Virginia is asking for a special meeting.
Yep.
After the
I think it's too
January
soon.
8th
I
meeting.
think February would be more than fine. It gives enough people enough time.
Louise, are there any dates in the first half of January that work for you?
The dates work fine for me in January. Any
Okay.
dates.
People are gone in January. You have students, the school doesn't open. When does the school schedule come in?
But they're on vacation a month.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned. You're gonna be talking to a ghost town.
School starts again on January 7th.
Okay, but how about the university?
Usually the third week of January.
Exactly. Most of our residents are
All
connected
right.
to the university.
Lisa, are there any dates in January that work well for you?
Well, not the second half, so.
Okay.
So, earlier.
Thursday, January 10th? Does that work
That
for anybody?
works for me. Thursday, January 10th. Dottie,
Sylvia,
does
can you make
Thursday,
that?
January
No,
10th work
I-
for
I
you
think
for
we
a
need to
special
have- I
meeting?
think this needs to be pushed out to
For a
February.
Swisher
Virginia. I don't
discussion?
know what we're in a rush for.
Yeah,
People are-
we
What
have
the
enough
rush is for.
things.
I really don't. I
I
think
think
it's just designed
two-
to have least amount of input from
2
residents.
months between meetings of talking about this, I think
It's
is
the
not
holidays.
rushing at
It's
all.
Christmas, it's Hanukkah, it's Kwanzaa, it's every festival that you can think of. It's the end
The
of the year.
residents
How
are
about-
overloaded already.
How about
with
Monday,
comprehensive
January
plan.
14th? Or how about a Saturday morning? I mean, maybe people would come to that.
I would
but-
be amenable to flexibility to make it as
Sorry.
high turnover as possible. You don't need all 5 counselors to be there.
We could I have
Well,
an idea.
it's nice to
we
have
could
all
do
5.
Saturday, January 12th, and we could conclude the meeting by going for a walk in the woods.
I'm not in favor of anything in January at all.
I tend to agree with that. You can do the same walk in February. You can.
Well,
Answer your question, January 14th that would be an opening for me.
is what? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just.
What
What day is-
that's your
But Virginia's in a rush to put a date.
The classes start again on
Well,
January 14th
get over it.
at the university.
Thank you, Dottie. January 14th is when classes start again, is what I'm hearing.
For the
For
university?
the university, it's first day of spring classes.
Yeah.
See, I'd be amenable for a week later or so to give folks time. We have a lot of people who are connected to the institution, and to ignore that schedule is just, again, in my opinion, a biased example of keeping people from participating.
May I ask a question? When are we beginning the comprehensive plan
Okay,
discussion?
when are we beginning the comprehensive
Well,
plan?
Okay.
Yeah, not
my,
the
my
second
question
half
for
of
council
This
is
week.
my question for council is there any interest in having a Saturday morning meeting to talk about Swisher to try to get a different
Can I
crowd
give an
and can
answer?
attend a weeknight?
Virginia's asking if
Do
a
both.
special meeting could be Saturday morning to
Do
get.
both.
Well, we can have another one in February. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
we
if you're,
can.
if you are agreeable to doing another one in February, fine.
Sure.
We did this for the vision
I'm asking
program.
for the next one.
So is January?
I'm not saying this is the last meeting of
Now you're
Swisher.
outside
I didn't
the
bring
how
my
the
phone,
conversation
so I don't have
started.
the calendar,
So
but
is January 14th a possibility?
That is a Monday.
I'm not, no.
Threw that out. Oh.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm free that night too. I'm just wondering if, because there's been an accusation that I'm trying to shut people out of these meetings, that perhaps a Saturday morning meeting would be a nice change of pace.
So,
I potentially have sports for
Okay.
kids that interfere.
That's probably a common occurrence. So perhaps Monday, January 14th would be a better date? Or the 15th? January 15th?
14th.
Does
or
anyone have
15th
any
is fine
conflicts
for
with
me. How
Monday,
about-
January 15th?
You said no, Dottie, to the 14th. Is the 15th?
I am saying no to anything in January, and we have a comprehensive plan that should take priority anyhow.
but we won't be having meetings at that.
I don't know. Okay, she's against any January meeting, but the rest of the council seems amenable for it, and so does Sylvia.
Conditioned upon the February.
Right.
Get me a February.
Absolutely, we can have a February meeting.
You want to schedule February meeting now too? So you're
Sure.
thinking Monday, January 14th.
By the way, are these meetings, why don't we just make them, public forums? Not all counselors have to be at that meeting. I don't think there should be this obligation to be there.
No, I don't
I mean,
think
if
they-
people are so afraid of fear of missing out, FOMO, too bad.
February 19th?
February 19th.
Yep. I can do that.
I'll be in Disneyland
I can't do
with my
Tuesdays.
Um,
Can we do a 21, the Thursday? That would be much better.
No, I'll
For
be
the
out of town.
20th.
That's better.
I can't do February 21st.
How about the 28th?
The 26th.
There's no school on the 28th.
You want to have a daytime
It's
meeting
a
then?
Thursday at book club.
February 28th is fine.
I signed them.
28th or 26th?
The 28th of February or the 26th?
I don't know.
I'm hearing 28th from Sylvia.
How about the
February
27th,
28th
Wednesday?
is a Thursday.
It's also fine.
26th is a Tuesday.
Can you do a Wednesday? Can anyone not do a Wednesday?
Wednesday is fine.
Later.
Oh, the 26th is a Wednesday.
I can do Wednesday.
Okay, so I have written down Tuesday, January 15th, and Wednesday, February 27th. Is that what?
You've got consensus for that for me.
And
Beautiful.
February 20, oh, I never heard anybody mention the 27th. And that's, you said was what day?
That's
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Wednesday, thank you. Okay, let's go for that, and we'll see. I mean, not everyone has to attend.
So this
And
is
it
just
might be a work
discussion.
session,
I think we should call it a work session.
you know,
because,
and I think that's a
Special
good,
special sessions, I think that just,
a work session.
raises,
Yeah,
yeah.
I like that too.
and the school district doesn't have every board member traveling to announce changes. They do it in pairs.
Okay, we have 2 scheduled now.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And so, yeah, you want to continue?
I'm sorry. I just want to talk about, maybe we can shove everything to the next month, but goal setting for 2019.
Okay.
We need revenue projections for the Marriott Hotel. And every single one of us has a list of infrastructure projects running in our heads that is going to eat up that money, that we need to get on paper, compiled as a group, and we need to get numbers put to it. And so I want to know if this group agrees that this is information we need in the next year, and if we can try to work together to make it happen.
I think this is already part of the budget plan for streets and sidewalks, and Josiah has, I'm working with Josiah to do a couple of projects, one of which is getting a Olive Court Q&A, because we should be preemptively anticipating that Mike Ritchie is not the only one who's going to be asking all sorts of questions about Olive Court, and we shouldn't be waiting for them to come to council.
We do have an
asking.
open house set up on December 17th.
That's nice, but a Q&A on the website and
Okay.
possibly something that we can distribute to them is preemptively good customer service.
Absolutely.
Okay,
But that
good.
does not answer
So,
the question
with-
that I have
No,
asked.
it does, because Josiah is the keeper of all of the things that supposedly we should be doing, ought to be doing, kinda are doing, whatever. It starts with him. And if he doesn't submit that, I think after that, it should revolve around that.
It starts with us, and it goes to him.
Well, that's what he has.
And it also, we need revenue projections.
Well,
Can you please provide us with revenue
this
projections?
is all we have in terms of at the end of the year, which is really unfortunate because this is not worth a whole lot of money in terms of revenue.
Mhm.
So I doubt that we're going to have, but yes, I can get revenue projections.
That would be wonderful. Thank
We're
you.
not going to be dollar happy, and I know I'm not, because this is not worth a whole lot of money in terms of assessment.
Okay, so we agree that this is an important piece of information to put together. Revenue projections from the
So what
Marriott
in
Hotel
the heck are you talking about? All I hear are mumbling.
and waiting infrastructure
I
projects.
mean, the revenue projections are the ones
It's
that
the
we used with the
last-
bond initiative. That's not going to
Okay,
change.
that's,
It's going to
no,
change
but
as
I've
you-
never seen it.
Yes,
Do you
did.
have it? I would
it
like
was
you to
mailed
send it to
you.
me.
Yes, someone emailed it to you. I think it was, what is her name from Spears Financial? Maggie.
Maggie Berger.
Yes. Now, the
Dottie, we're on the
Now, let me ask you a
last
question. Now, let me clarify
agenda
something.
item
Hold
under
on a
building
minute.
zoning.
Maggie
Louise,
Berger
hold
sent
on,
us
because
information
Steve
on
asked
buying
you.
the Swisher
You're going to be on
Tract.
the hot seat right now. Steve, I did ask you for the pro forma that the One University Place did submit to council in sometime in November or October of the prior council term. And I did ask for it, but because Virginia received another financial set of documents that was used for the bond initiative, I thought that was probably even better. But the pro forma is the developer's numbers that were submitted as a condition, I think it was a conditional zoning agreement. And I sent you an email on that, and you were confused as to what it meant or what it was, and we never connected. So my question to you now is, can
You sent me an email on October 25 that says, can you send me a copy of the ULP pro forma submitted to the city in
That's right.
2017? And I sent you an email on October 26th that says, here you go.
And then you sent me one saying I misread it.
And I
think I
attached
sent you
it.
the wrong document. And by then, there was already a response to Virginia. So either way, if you look at ULP's numbers, they're much higher because that's what the developer wanted that council to appreciate. I didn't take that position. And I took a much more conservative position, much more than values that were submitted.
Sylvia, I sent you the ULP pro forma on the 26th of October.
Did you? Okay. Then, in any event, Spears is what we asked the community to vote on in order to mortgage all of our homes so that we can pay for the Swisher track, and that's what we're counting on. And we're also using
And we
our
need-
lost money. So I'll get that information for this group.
Wonderful, thank
But
you.
it's not going to change that much.
Okay, can we keep moving on here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think that you're going to defer anything
Everything else is
and
deferred.
we'll move on to e-government. And Lisa, you sent around a written report.
Oh my God, we have to do
And you and Chris were
Yes,
going to do
we
a
did.
discussion on the city website.
Yes, we are. So I'm just going to give you a quote from the minutes of the September 11th, 2001 council meeting. The city website is ready to be activated, and that was 17 years ago. So I think we're ready to be redesigned, and Chris has a PowerPoint that she is going to present with the two options that we've received from Civic Plus.
Thank you. So obviously we are at 10:40. I will try and make this as quick as I can. Obviously, we all know the issues that we would like to solve. You can see them there. Dottie, I know you can't see this, but we are trying to have better functionality for searching, the ability to pay things online, the ability to have a stable website and email system, the ability...
So are we talking, can I ask, are we talking about the website?
Yes, we are.
I find it excellent. I am glad that we are using a sophisticated and knowledgeable company.
Okay.
So moved.
So I can stop right here and not go through any other slides and send it to you via email if you're telling me yes to engage.
Well, I just want to know what suite of services did you buy from CivPro, because I know a lot of other communities use them.
So what I'm hoping that we can, let me just go.
Also walk me through the RFP process, because you had a couple of bids out there too.
So we went out to Granicus. We asked for 2 from Civic Pro. We asked for what you could call as the basic model and the one that has the 40 modules. As someone who was in charge of a financial software system at my regular job, we installed 3 modules. It's better to have everything coded up front and be able to, and be able to expand as we grow and as we need them. I would hate for us to go with, it's a very good module, but, excuse me, it's better, it's more efficient, it's more cost effective to have everything in place and you grow with it.
Right.
So we reached out to Civic Plus because they are the #1 in the United States. They have over 3,500 clients. They are 92% in retention of their clients. Granicus, they are trying very hard. They are #2. But let me just go back here real quick. Granicus, this is what they have for their 2 modules, their 2 platforms, roughly 800 clients. And when this is a live site, meaning live clients. Civic Pro has currently 3,571. So what we're trying to address, This is the module that I think is best for the city. I see a lot of applications already. I had hoped I could get into the admin manual so I could see more functionality, so I could give you more examples. But we are going to be able to be mobile. If you remember back to when you were first on council, Sylvia, and I believe it was, and I have the pen, Banyan, you wanted to get them going so we could have mobile capabilities, forms online, content storage online, etc. We will have that with this. The functionality is there. We just need to have the imagination to use it. So I'm taking this as a positive sign that
Yeah, how much is it costing? Because you have an allocation of what, 5,000?
Currently we have 5,000. We do have the ability to either pay on a payment program, or we can pay 30% when we sign the contract, 70% when we go live. So that would be crossing 2 fiscal years. Or we can have basically a zero interest loan, 4 years to pay out, which would include the yearly hosting and maintenance fees.
Okay.
So that would be obviously a 4-year fiscal year. And just because I knew you would ask, Sylvia, possible revenue sources. I'm envisioning that we will put building permit applications. We will use, all of our rental permits will be online, including payments. So I see money coming from that. We're going to put the police department on this platform. We'll take some of their IT. Obviously, we have to, based on the bond referendum, and I really wish I had water, we have to promote tourism. So I was assuming that we could use the website to help promote tourism, and that money could, a portion of the money could be allocated towards this.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are others, the MediaCom franchise fee. We hope to have web streaming still on our website. So I see that as a potential revenue source. I'm happy to send this to you. I think we need a vote.
So I'll make a motion.
But what are we voting on? Which of those payments?
So I will make the motion to approve signing a contract with Civic Plus for the Civic Engage website package design.
Could you include in your motion if we're gonna do the
Payment.
5,000 up front and then 12, or then 9,999.5?
If I may put on my hat from job number 1, and I'm going to look at Sylvia, but we at the university, we try and defer payments over multiple fiscal years because you have uncertainty as to what your revenue streams are. But within a year and a half, we will have revenue coming in for hotel motel tax. We will have increased property taxes coming from the site. I would be an advocate for stretching it out over the 4 years.
That's what I wanted initially, yeah. That's what I thought you were going with, Lisa.
You said which,
Yeah,
okay.
5, yeah.
So there's 2, and then there's the payment options, so, okay.
So your motion is for Civic Plus, Civic Engage.
Civic Engage and the
4-year
The 4-year program.
pay
Second.
plan.
Okay, and a second by Nick. So Dottie, we're gonna vote on that. Civic Plus. Are you following that?
Well, I can't hear, but.
Dottie, are you
I
in
think
favor of the web redesign?
We're voting on the web design, correct?
Right, and we're picking Civic Engage to pay over 4 fiscal years.
And what?
To pay over 4 fiscal years, spreading out the payments.
Oh, okay,
Are you in favor?
I'm in favor.
Sorry.
And just to be clear, there's no interest in those.
There is no
Yeah.
interest.
I think it's a no-brainer.
Okay, so continue
that
with
way.
your roll call vote.
Okay.
That was Dottie. Sylvia? Yeah, I mean, everyone's yes, right? Do we need a roll call for this?
Yeah, make the roll call.
I guess we don't. I guess we don't.
We
All
don't.
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say
Aye.
no. Okay, it all carries. 5-0. Yes. Very good. Wake me up here.
So did it carry?
Okay.
Yes, it did.
Okay.
So, did you have other things, Lisa?
That's all.
Okay. And,
Good.
we need to go back. I hate to say this, but we need to go back to the,
Parking.
Oh, man.
So Brian wrote in, he received 2 parking tickets. Nate, if you want to speak to this, he is asking the council to consider dismissing the 2 parking tickets.
So yeah, he admits to the violation. When I spoke to him before he emailed Chris, we had the same conversation that I did it, but I would like an exception. I told him to send the email to Chris, and it's a council decision.
I can't hear you, Nate.
Sorry, Dottie. I said that he had initially called and talked to me on the phone. I told him that the process was to go through council because he doesn't dispute that
Are we talking about the parking ticket?
Yes, he doesn't dispute the violation occurred. He just wants an exception made in this case. So that's he was instructed to follow the process to come to council because the only ones I can dismiss are the non-violations that were issued in error or something like that, which is not the case here. So
there was no error. Did you have any miscommunications at any point with this household? Sorry.
no, he didn't. He was informed that's an option if he reaches out and gets
but
permission.
I mean, as to parking, did he contact any member of staff asking?
No, that's what I'm saying. He didn't reach out to the PD at all to get permission. He was told that was an option in the future. If he needs an exception for a night or a couple nights with family in town, we will gladly do that, but he didn't take the effort ahead of time.
Well, I would not excuse it. I believe that the law is the law, and we're all supposed to follow. So I will not vote to excuse it, either of them.
Okay, we need a motion from council in the positive or in the negative, however you want to word it. Well, I guess it should be, would the council to dismiss the 2 parking tickets for 409 Monroe Street? We have his note posted here at the city office so we can read it. I parked my vehicle, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Dottie?
No, I can't.
Then I'm not going to read it.
You want me
Okay, we already know your
Let me
vote.
ask you another question. How have we voted on similar situations in this past calendar year?
Well, if we're voting on the parking ticket, I make a motion that we not excuse it and that we hold him to the obligation
I just want to
of.
hear from Nate what the track record of this council has been on these requests before, where there's no error and there's no prior communications contraindicating the outcome, which is this violation.
Yeah, the council has upheld the citations in instances like this where we had one on Grand Avenue that the same situation, they forgot to move their vehicles back. They were cited at some time overnight and it was upheld. So there's other examples, but that's the most recent one that comes to mind.
Thank you.
To uphold the
Dottie, you made a motion to uphold the
citations.
the citation.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second from Lisa. Is the council ready to vote? All in favor, say aye. This is to uphold the citations.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. The citations will be upheld.
I will let him know.
Thank you.
Can you please also cite that that's the precedent, the most recent precedent we have?
Are there any objection to adjournment? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned by unanimous consent. Thanks, everyone.
My